Okay, cool. So I'll throw it out to the panel. Does anyone want to kind of push back on anything, or any further points to elaborate from there?
I mean, I guess I wanted to sort of I guess it's not really a point, but I wanted to sort of congratulate you, Jangles, because I think you actually did really well what you set out to do. And it's funny because before we went on this panel, I sort of wanted to sort of have my own definition of what I think is quote unquote responsible platforming, right? And I think you hit it like straight on the head, and you covered like all of my points in terms of what I think is important, like going into a debate like that with someone who is truly reprehensible. So I think number one, you have to be familiar and like good with the format, which I mean, obviously you've done debates for a while, so I think that's obvious. I think you have to be ready to sort of debunk and in some cases even defame them, or like push back hard against their arguments, which is something that, without mentioning any names, I was really worried that another big leftist wasn't gonna do when talking to Milo, which is why I was really against. I think when you go into a discussion with somebody like that, you like your goal in that discussion cannot be to reach like some sort of common ground or make them seem more palpable. Like they have to be exposed for what their ideas are, and I think that's super important. And also I think you have to be like intimately familiar with sort of that person and their arguments and rhetoric. Like you cannot go into that without having researched the person, and not necessarily the arguments, but the way that that person carries themselves and talks and generally does things. So yeah, I think on all those fronts you did really well, honestly. I think it's a good example of what you can do in sort of that kind of scenario.
I'd get everyone to sort of give their own kind of take on platforming in general, which we can get to. But presuming that both Jangles and later Dylan are happy with kind of being put on the spot to a certain degree, I was hoping what we could do is, first of all, with you, Jangles. You know, I think you in particular have been the center of quite a lot of controversy around the Thorgo platforming, right?
You could say that, yeah.
Okay.
Frequently placed in the center of the screen, at least for me. I don't know about y'all.
What's that?
Oh, that Jangles is in the center of all of us, at least on my screen. I don't know about the rest of you.
That's a great meme.
Everyone,
yeah,
everyone
yes.
move Jangles into the center.
Jangles is just full screen for me.
Jangles is in the hot seat now.
I'm the Alice of the Brady Bunch.
So what I'm interested to see here is I'd like you to kind of in the course of maybe like three or 4 minutes, just lay out your kind of, I guess, logic and maybe defense of why you debated Milo amongst all this controversy. And then once you've done that, I'll kind of throw it around to anyone really to jump in and ask questions and probe, and we'll kind of go from there. So that's how we're gonna go for now. So Jangles, over to you. Tell us a bit about the debate, the logic going in, what you thought of it.
Yeah, so I would like to let everyone know that I did listen and take very, very seriously the responsibility of potentially platforming someone who is, I would consider, a pretty objectionable human being. The furthest thing from my mind, and I think our goals going into that were the same. I do not want Milo to come back. My justification going into it was, one, he's already has a platform. He has close to 1 million subs on YouTube. He has a TV show on Censored TV, which I think is owned by Gavin McGinnis. I'm pretty sure. Is that right, Chud?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. So the goal was he's trying to come back. He wants to come back, and he was going to be quote unquote platformed on that panel, no matter what. He was going to be on there to talk. There's some stuff behind the scenes that I'm not allowed to tell anybody, but just rest assured that he was going to be there no matter what. And I was really concerned about, well, one, if way back in like when he in his heyday, I remember like watching him rise and being on Bill Maher for that one day before he completely fell off the map. But like seeing the clips, seeing him like just be this snarky little jerk and being shitty to trans people, being shitty to undocumented students and things like that. And I just, man, if you had told me like 5 years ago I would get a chance to like talk to him and that it would actually go, in my opinion, really well, I wouldn't have believed you. But I want everyone to know that I took that very, very seriously. It was not something I was doing to like grow my career or anything like that. It wasn't, I wasn't willing to risk doing it if I didn't think I could do a good job. The reason one of the reasons I'm really for, we're going to call it platforming, but I view debates as different than platforming for a few reasons. One, there's some research on inoculation. So inoculation is a medical term. It kind of sort of means immunization. Basically, like you give a little bit of something to someone, and then it can help inoculate them because you know what to expect. So there's a research that's actually called Vaccinating Against Hate. That's the title of the study, and it's about attitudinal inoculation. So basically, if you are exposed to counterpoints before you're exposed to ideas that could be extremist, you're way more likely to be insulated against those ideas because you kind of know what to expect, and it's not just hearing those ideas coming at you. So I had a very specific strategy going in with Milo. I think I acted on that strategy pretty well. I didn't. I mean, there might be criticisms that you can levy at me, and they're perfectly fair. But I would like to think that I did the best. Is the best that thing could have gone, given my relative inadequacy at doing what I do. So, yeah, I think that's more or less all I had to say.
Of support for Jangles, and I don't know if the people who are in opposition are hiding in wait. So I just want to try and like get some common ground, and I want to ascertain. I have my own idea of a definition, but what do people think platforming is? Like I want to get a feel for what people like think it objectively means in this sense.
Yeah, sure. For me, my understanding of platforming has always been essentially when legitimacy or credence is given to a viewpoint, and that can be done through a whole bunch of ways. It can be done through like sort of credulously presenting a position as worthy of debate. It can be done through favorable interviews. There's all kinds of ways and degrees of that. So to me, this is something that anybody who watches my content, and probably people who've seen me on or been on panels with me, have heard me talk about the fact that I grew up in a very extreme religious environment, which is one of the big concerns of people who get platformed. Cultish figures, people who build cults of personality are the riskiest people to put on a platform, because they don't engage in good faith at all. They're there to identify, um call out to vulnerable people in the population of the audience. And the bigger audience they can get, the more likelihood that they're going to find those people in that audience who have pre-existing biases and sort of scoop them into whatever they believe. So that's my working definition of a platform. And I think that a platform can be denied or can be used effectively. However, there are a lot of considerations that need to go into that, and I think it's something that any person, especially in this space, should be taking very seriously and shouldn't be doing flippantly. And in fact, I actually will agree with what Dario said about Jangles' appearance. With Jangles, I want to say you did really good. In my opinion, you did really good in that debate against Milo. And that's kind of the sort of thing that I would advocate for, which is a platform that is unbiased, but isn't or unbiased as can be, but isn't willing to grant like undue credulity to a position. Yeah, so I don't want to go too deep into it. I have other things I'll say later on, but that's basically my thoughts on platform.
Okay. So what is this, a Jangle circle jerk, or do we have anyone that wants to?
I actually can take criticism, just
Come
so
on.
you know.
Someone throw down. I know there's someone out there that's ready to throw down on Jangles.
I mean, I don't know. I think you did really well.
Well, I did come here, I suppose, in opposition to platforming Milo, but I will say in a relatively soft sense, because generally I am fairly pro debate and things like that. I mean, I try to be very pragmatic about these things, and I feel like weighing everything up personally, I don't think this would have been the move to make. But I don't know if this is really the slam dunk that anyone's asking for here. So if anyone wants to go in
No,
a
it's
little
okay.
harder, I can wait.
No, listen, don't worry about going hard, okay? I'm kind of memeing. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it because I know that you had some kind of objections. So yeah, just what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so so like I said, right? I'm generally pro these things. I mean, I've debated Sargon of Akkad like twice, um, and shit like that. I'm generally up for getting the left platformed. I'm generally up for debates if someone's being properly challenged. I think Milo is a very unique case in that he was a big figure, he died a death, and now that he thinks there's been enough time since the controversy, he's going to try and weasel his way back in. And I think what you said about he already has a platform in some respect, maybe, but what we do know is that he definitely doesn't have any money. Because this is something that you see every few months him bitching about or whatever, and that brings me joy, of course. But what he's really going for, in my opinion, is he's not even necessarily doing, say, the Richard Spencer thing, where he's getting the platform to reach out to susceptible people with the anti-Semitism to draw in anybody who's vulnerable to these kinds of ideas. I think he's actually appealing to people who are already basically Nazis, straight up, just people who go on poll and stuff, by getting as much spotlight as he can, because then that's when you get the threads on poll, and that's when you get the thing like, oh, Milo is back, blah blah blah, and getting those people on his side again, and having people think, oh, Milo's doing something again, is a much lower bar than what we typically go for in convincing the other side of the audience when we usually talk about platform forming. And I think the only way he can really fuck that up is if he completely loses his composure and he's screaming at you, or he like rage quits or something like that, and that's just like not even in your control. No matter how well you do, that usually just doesn't happen. So I feel like from that perspective, there was no real reason to take that debate, because I feel like for him, he's almost certain to get what he wants out of it, and I feel that's what we need to be thinking about, like specifically what are they coming for, and what do they want out of this? Because if he really did have that much of a platform already, I mean, no offense, Jangles, of course, but he wouldn't be debating you.
Amazing.
That's fair. Yeah.
So he really is just grabbing at everything he can, and it is, I think it is probably going to work for him. He's got a debate coming up with Destiny soon, hasn't he? And that's going to be fucking perfect for him, because everyone that he's trying to appeal to, they fucking hate Destiny already. So he can just literally sit there and throw out the meme statistics and the Jewish question, which he was already doing in your debate as well. And it's just that's all he needs to do. Now I will say what you said in the opening, where you knew that he was definitely going to come on that channel and he was going to debate somebody. That, for me, it does change it a bit. I do think, okay, well, in that case, I mean, coming back to Sargon, actually, that's one of the reasons I debated Sargon the second time, because he was coming down to my university. He was definitely coming no matter what was happening. And if I had so chosen, I could turn it from a just unchallenged discussion into a debate, which is why I figured that was probably worth it. And in your case, I think, yeah, if you couldn't control what this other guy was doing, he was definitely going to bring him on, then kind of fair enough. But at the same time, what I have seen in the wider left around this discussion, I think kind of misses this point. And personally, I mean, I haven't had too much of an ear to it, but I think most people probably don't know that. And I think a lot of people have now been getting the impression that just because you do well in the debate, and you did do well, and like congrats on that and everything, but just because you do well in the debate, that means it's worth having. But I think in this case, that's not enough for me, and I think that's what a lot of leftists need to think about, and change how they're really looking at the dynamics of why we have debates. So that's kind of my perspective on it. So yeah.
Something that you said was I think that it's kind of in the back of our minds, is like, this is a really unique situation, or at least the Milo one was. He was gone. He was this huge figure. He was this really abrasive, horrendous figure that still kind of like tossed off everything and didn't want to have good faith discussions. So yeah, it was way different than the normal discussions on platforming. So I think that's really fair to bring up. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Justin,
exactly. You got to be very pragmatic. You
you
got to
want-
do it case by case. Yeah.
So because people haven't raised the arguments, because I know what arguments you've had to deal with, and I don't necessarily adopt them, but it's probably better that you deal with them. So forgive me, friend.
Yeah, can I just point out? I just want to point out, Riley, I want you to continue, but like, it is so hard to find people that are like hardline anti-platforming that are willing to come onto a panel to talk about it, right? It's the same thing as the people that are anti-debate. Well, they don't want to debate about it. So, you know, I did my best to get some real different viewpoints. So, Riley, please continue and let's.
All good. No,
devil's advocate,
Justin,
let's
this
go.
is the labor of love, and once we get through
gotcha.
this, we can
got it.
hug this out. All right. So
I got you.
okay, so before you mentioned a little bit about the things that Milo has been doing. Could you mention again, just for reference, like what you said that he's been becoming relevant recently? How has he been doing that?
So he's been on Censored TV. So I want to
Censored
check to make
TV.
sure. Censored.tv. Yep. So
Okay. Do
Pull
you
up,
think that's
come
like or I suppose that like the first question is that like, do you think that's a substantive platform? Do you think that he's actually getting like a lot of new viewership from there?
it's hard to say like whether or not it's a substantive platform. I mean, people who still he's still a quote unquote big name in the sense that people who are in our circles probably definitely remember him. And it's
But I
this
mean, like
platform.
when you say that he's coming back, I'm trying to look for evidence of that, and I'm trying to ascertain like if you would think that like him being on censored TV is like actually him coming back, or if it's basically the same as posting to, like a third-party site where really it doesn't mean anything. Right? That's what I'm trying to suss out.
Okay, now that's a fair comparison. So I think it's evidence that he's quote unquote coming back because he was canceled by the right. So he was like he was kind of thrown out of like especially the major right wing circles. And that's what brought his downfall. Not the left's opposition to him, but the right canceling him. And so the fact that the right now it's really generous to call Censor TV the right. That's being real charitable to them. But he is kind of gaining traction in there. So was someone go ahead?
Well, to follow up then, if someone else wants to take that off, then they're more than welcome to. But I can continue to push on it.
I mean, my thing would be is I'm looking at his numbers, and his numbers are just going up generally. He used to get like 500,000 like back in the day. He used to get huge numbers, right? Then he went down to like 10K at like the lowest point, and then he kind of stopped content creation. He started like going into massive financial worry and debt. And then recently I've seen he's been breaking 100K again, right? So he's not hitting 500K, but if you're looking at a trajectory of success, he's going at 10K to 20 to 30 to 50 to 100K. And recently I saw 161K views on these videos. So it's a renewal of old viewership and possibly expansion into like, you know, it's been a while since he's been on the platform. So there's probably a lot more people listening now, a lot different crowd. The Trumposphere is a lot different than it was, say, 2, 3, 4 years ago.
So Justin, the question to you, kind of following up on that then. All right, so let's say that he is getting more traction nowadays. Do you think it's possible that that's possible that a non-zero number of people after watching the debate with you ended up going and subscribing to Milo?
Definitely, yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Well, that sounds kind of like a problem, right? Like
Yeah.
I would say, like I hate that I'm making this argument because I hate it myself. But don't you think that like by contributing in any way to him growing his platform, that might be in some way problematic?
It could be. No, like I fully accept the risk and criticisms of this. Like, there's definitely when you say non-zero, it's almost definitely non-zero. I can't say nah. No one did.
I mean, like, this could have been like, abstinence is the best form of protection, right? Like, the best way to prevent something from happening is not doing it. You know?
I think also to follow up on this, I think.
Can we throw it to Dario? He's had his hand up for a little bit, and then you can go after if you like.
I think. Okay, so I don't want to, I guess, derail what you had going on too much because it seemed like you were, I guess, sort of reaching like a conclusion there in terms of like the non-zero. I think I might have like a more extremist stance on this because I think like regardless of like Milo's trajectory, I think it could be worthwhile debating him, right? And this is because I don't think, like, just as you say, there's a non-zero chance that like some of the people who are like on Jangles' side might subscribe to Milo. I also think there's a non-zero chance that some of the people who came there for Milo might now come over or like throw away like some of his more extremist ideas, right? And for me, the question is just how well you do it and the approach that you go about it, right? Because I think there's always ultimately gonna be like a mismatch of communities. And the performance is sort of the key of like who comes out ahead in terms of the, I guess, utility gained from the conversation, right? So if you do really bad, then maybe more of your viewers go over to them. But if you do really well, then ultimately more of their viewers go over to you. And as was mentioned previously, like it's not like he is, I wouldn't like, it's not like Milo is deplatformed in the sense that he doesn't have the ability to create content and garner viewership. Like he's not banned on like all platforms, right? He's not banned off the internet, just like some other people might be, right? So he's gonna grow his viewership.
If Milo is as dangerous as people make him out to be, then isn't any amount of contributing to his platform more than what we should be doing? Right? Like that's the argument I would imagine, right?
Sure, this merges your two arguments right here. So there's a third option in that both of us look bad going into that debate, and I count that as a win. So one of the reasons why is Milo dangerous? Why is he why did he get popular in the first place? What was his entire ethos? It was being this really snarky, like troll, like the world's most dangerous troll. Vice called him the world's most dangerous troll. And then to go into a debate with the specific, I could not have imagined it would happen, but in this debate, he just did it completely reversed on everything. He looked like a whiny, crying baby. So that strong, sassy figure that the alt-right loved was reduced to a withering pile of crying. So if they liked him for that, and they see him just completely reverse all that, completely do the things, completely get triggered, completely get emotional, completely get mad, something that he said, like he didn't even rate me out of 10, which is what he told Bill Maher he did his trolls. So to see him reduce that, I think that if you loved Milo going into that, your confidence was shaken in him.
I think something that shouldn't be discounted, to respond to Dario though, is that there is a difference in elasticity or there seems to be at least a difference in elasticity between audiences. People who are willing to buy into really, really extreme political viewpoints and extreme hate, like they are already, like we've talked about this is pretty well recognized with the pipeline, right? People don't just pop out of a pipeline. If you get to a point where you're believing in an extreme viewpoint, you've likely internalized like quite a lot of indoctrination. And I know that that's the case because that's how churches, like extreme churches and cults work. They get you removed from other social groups, and it makes it incredibly hard to leave because you have to renounce everything that you've come to believe, and you've been pushed out of other spaces because of the toxicity of those beliefs. So I think it's really important to recognize that there is in a lot of audiences a asymmetry to the level of devotion to beliefs that may not that is worth considering when you're trying to say, oh, where are we going to win people over from a specific audience?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw over to Mark. He's been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I have two questions. So the first one, Jangles, how many subs did you get after that debate?
1 sec. Roughly 1,500.
Pretty good. That would be my counterpoint to Riley is, taking on someone like that also boosts your stature. So that's actually more helpful to you and our side because he's already got star power to work with. Maybe former star power, but in the right, he's still considered, relatively liked. People have brushed off his pedo comments pretty easily at this point and are willing to just go, whatever, and move the fuck on. The second question is, what expectation does everyone have out of debates like this besides entertainment?
I mean, I personally, sorry, I know I want to jump in here because I'm hardline, like this is entertainment, right? That's the primary goal here. And anything off the back of that is just sort of surplus to that, So yeah, I'm pretty hard.
I honestly, I kind of agree with that point. Like, I also think like it's mostly it's entertainment, right? But it's a question of like how you sort of do the entertainment, right? And I think
it's like
when
infotainment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. So for me, I think like what I was really looking for and what I was really enjoyed the way that Jangles did in that debate was that he didn't just like go for the these are the facts and just like read them out loud, and like he went for the throat. Like he was like cutthroat. He was like he almost made Milo cry, right? And I think that is actually like that is what made the difference, right? That is what I think sort of made him in the end is gonna dissuade like some of his viewers, right? And like I'm curious, like because that's sort of the way that I view it too, the way that you sort of presented it, Demon Mama. I don't know if that was like a point in like whichever favor, but I do think that there are people on Milo's side that watch Milo's content of different degrees, right? And I think if we are like leftists on the internet trying to convince people that our ideas are better, then we should also have some level of confidence that we can convince people on the right that our ideas are better by using like rhetoric that appeals to them, right, in some sort of way.
I think in by and large that like the far right is like genuine like again, I don't have stats on hand, but I'm pretty sure they're a pretty severe minority as far as the people who would be able to watch Milo's content, which is pretty rife with like raw hate. Like, I mean, most of his content, I mean, he wrote, I mean, God, back when he was working for Breitbart, I haven't watched any of his stuff like very recently, but I mean, he used to write stuff about like he wrote an entire article devoted to just making fun of lesbians because lesbians have a statistically higher rate of like domestic abuse per capita, like, and it's like or something, and it's like I mean, this is his his platform is very extreme. He wrote an article that had multiple uses of the triple brackets or the triple parentheses. Like, he's very extreme. So I think that for somebody like Milo, his audience has, like, for the most part, for most people to be enjoying Milo, like, he's pretty far down the pipeline. He's very open in a lot of the things that he advocates for. And I think that type of I think that we would be mistaken as like an online collective to underestimate how much indoctrination like is used in those cases, and how resistant a lot of people who are deep into that level of hate are to sort of messages of debate and reason. And that doesn't mean I think that it's completely outright. I just think it needs to be taken pretty seriously. And in fact, one of the things I was going to say before that I didn't end up really following up on, but I do want to bring it up, is like with reference to like Milo growing and other issues of platforming that I've had. Honestly, I will be completely honest. I thought that I already said it once, but I thought that Jangles did really, really good in this particular debate. I thought this was a pretty responsible example of platforming. However, there's another sort of elephant in the room example of Milo Yiannopoulos specifically platforming that I think is much more problematic, and it acts on some of these things that I'm talking about here, which is the previously Peter Coffin, now Destiny, going on a platform that at a conservative convention with a conservative host and mod, and agreeing to go on that and granting legitimacy to that platform, which I have huge problems with, because in my mind, that's the worst example of how to platform somebody for a debate.
Yeah, I'd actually be interested. You can hear in your perspective on this, is the furthest left Marxist on Twitter, right? Like, what was your reaction to the Peter Coffin sort of Milo debate, and your thoughts on that?
I didn't know that had happened. Could you
Oh.
could you give me the overview?
Yeah, so essentially, there's an event called MythCon. You might be.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. So it's basically a bunch of Voitoids getting together and circle jerking, and they normally get like a leftist patsy on to kind of throw tomatoes at, essentially the intellectual equivalent of tomatoes at. So, Peter Coffin was invited to come on and have a discussion, or maybe even a panel with Milo and some other people. Lauren Chen was going to be moderating it. And you know, basically there was an enormous backlash against it, to the point where like there was even some people, like one person was wishing cancer upon Peter Coffin because they'd made the decision to go to this event. So as a result of this pushback from lefties, bear in mind, you know, they decided not to go to the Milo conference, and now it's been passed to Destiny. So instead of Peter Coffin going, Destiny, who is Soc Dem or liberal, I guess, maybe omniliberal is obviously how he refers to himself. So we've kind of, so the way some have painted it is we've lost an opportunity to get a leftist there, and now we've got someone more liberally minded. So yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Okay, so I knew Destiny was going to be debating him. I didn't know before that it was Peter Coffin who was booked in for that. I mean, it's a difficult one, right? I think being able to answer questions like these is why we need to cultivate a better understanding of these types of things on the left and the online left. I don't think it should be I don't like the factionalism that I kind of see come out of it, where it's like you either got the debate bros or whatever, the Vosh simps, as it were, like who are like, yeah, let's just as long as we can debate well, then it's fine and whatever, and we want to get the left platformed at all costs. And then you've obviously got the more stereotypical extreme on the other end that we all know about, where it's like, yeah, don't even consider it. I think in this specific case, if you were gonna put it all down to me, God, I'm leaning towards put Peter Coffin on up there, but at the same time, though, the audience that you're talking to here is just, I can't imagine a single person you're going to get out of that, because maybe MythCon at the start, right, it was more classical liberal, if anyone even calls themselves that anymore. And you've got more kind of malleable people among them, I think, but these days it's got to be pretty far right, yeah. So
I can send you the questions they sent me for my panel. They're very right wing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was also gonna say, like,
have the SJWs gone too far? What do you think, Jangles?
Loaded questions is the least you would expect, right? But I'd almost be tempted to say, like, it almost doesn't matter that much. It's just kind of shitty either way. I think Destiny going on up there is shitty. I think Peter going on up there wouldn't have really amounted to anything productive either. So I think it's almost kind of a lose-lose. Like, to both options are worse, as the saying goes.
I think I have I think I have an interesting point for that.
Can we let Mark? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I actually disagree with that. I think love or hate him, and I'm not a Destiny fan at all. I think Destiny's the better person to be talking to someone like Milo. I think he's the better debater. Peter Coffin, like, he was probably the worst person, one of the worst people on the left to throw up there. I think he would have gotten rolled over in every single way and would have turned into the screeching SJW that Milo wants to debate. Destiny's not going to do that. I think he's going to actually be able to push back on these same talking points that he's heard a million times, that he's counterpointed in hundreds of other debates that he's had over the years of doing this, as opposed to Peter Coffin, who has some very problematic things about him as well, being up there and every now and then going, well, yeah, actually, I kind of agree with that on the social stuff and the culture war bullshit. Like, no, that's the wrong person to have up there. Someone who's going to go, yeah, I agree. You basically put him on Joe Rogan, then that's as good as it is.
I think that's
a fair point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to clarify, in case he's listening, I don't necessarily hate Peter Coffin that much, but actually, if you're going to talk about how...
Yeah, I don't hate him either. It's just
sorry, just to say, Peter's uses they them, just so everyone knows.
Sorry,
shit.
I thought it was any all, actually.
No, I'm pretty sure it's stay there. But in any case, like, Peter gets so much shit, like, and I just feel inclined sometimes to kind of push back on that a little bit, because like I understand what people are saying, but can we just kind of accept that, like, the reaction to just going to having a conversation with someone controversial was, like, completely absurd, right? Like, I don't know, like, it was just crazy to me, this wave of like unhinged criticism that he was getting. It wasn't even criticism, it was just shitting on him,
But
okay,
I think I can push back. I can justify it. I can justify it. Fuck you. I can justify it.
Okay, go on then.
Same.
All right. So people have talked about, I think I've repeatedly heard, and I actually haven't heard one person say up until this point that Jangles did not do, or I think I've heard everyone basically say to some effect that what Jangles did was a responsible example of platforming. Forgive me, Lord. I'm gonna say it wasn't. I'm gonna say it wasn't. I'm gonna say that it was that all the reaction was justified, and here's the reason why.
Pump it up. Let's go,
Justin. So if everyone's on the consensus that it ended up going over fine, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that everyone thought it went over fine because of how well Justin did compared to Milo. Is that a correct assertion? Is that a correct assumption? You can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to be that comparatively Justin looked better than Milo, and so
I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's all of it, though.
Well,
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think
this was something I was going to bring up about the MythCon thing when we get a chance. I don't want to interrupt anybody, but
for me,
Well,
it isn't.
okay.
For me, it isn't about looking good. It's more
Mhm.
about the type of rhetoric used and sort of the way that you're doing it, right? Because it's not hard to look. I mean, if you do any reading, it like from a leftist perspective, it's not hard to come out looking good, right? What I'm mostly curious is from a right wing perspective. How did Jangles look compared to Milo, right? Like how like what kind of rhetoric was used, like what kind of like arguments were used, right? Because it's not hard looking good, like from our perspective, right?
Yeah, no, and I think that's entirely right. If someone else wants to add something, but I think that's entirely fair.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that I would say would work against work for Milo in this is it triggers the right wing's victim complex a little bit because of how hard he went. But at the same time, it's a lot worse if he would have became the screeching SJW that he wanted to debate. I keep pointing that out. That he was not ready for that.
Okay. So I seem to get some consensus. So Justin, I want to ask you this question then. All right? Because you did very well. Congratulations. I will give you that compliment. Did you know going into that what happened would have happened in the way that it did?
Nope. Can't even pretend.
So let's talk about that because this is important, right? You went into there not knowing at all how that would have played out. I mean, sure, you had your plans, you had your arguments, and you had all that, but you had no idea what to expect from Milo. All right, I would make the argument.
I'll push back slightly. I'll push back slightly to that. I think I did know. I had a good idea of what to expect.
Sure. But you didn't expect like the simpering, whining, always complaining about you being a meanie boyo to him.
No, my research actually worked against me there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to make the argument that it's not necessarily what actually happened that makes what you did morally blameworthy. And I'm sorry for calling it morally blameworthy, but I have for the argument.
You're okay.
But the fact that you engaged in something which carried such a significant danger of creating a poor outcome is itself what has a bad situation. Going back to like the abstinence example, all right? Yes, congratulations. To follow the analogy, you had sex and you didn't get the girlfriend pregnant. I guess we're also assuming you're straight here. Congratulations, or whatever. Congratulations, you didn't get the girlfriend.
Lots of hypotheticals here.
Yeah, lots of hypotheticals. But it certainly carried a risk. And if you wanted to avoid the risk to the best of your ability, then you shouldn't have done it at all. Right? If you wanted to completely avoid the risk and not put other people in jeopardy, you shouldn't have done it at all. All right?
And I think I agree with that. If I wanted to avoid all risk, I wouldn't have gone at all. But there's a couple of but to take that analogy, if so in this example with sex, which is my this is something I'm very well versed in because I'm an expert. In this scenario, the risk is still there because if I don't have the sex, someone else is going to have the sex. So the total amount of bad things that resulted from the sex might still be there. There's also the analogy
contributed to that outcome not happening. You could have contributed in your own autonomy to that not happening, right?
I could have, yes. But the outcome still would have happened because it's outside of my complete control. There's also, I think this actually works pretty well as an example. Yes, the abstinence is the only way to make the risk a zero, but the reward, if you take the proper precautions, is really, really nice.
How good's your pullout game, Jangles?
Oh my god! What? Wait, no, stop. Okay, listen. Right. Yeah. So I see both Dimon and Dario have got your hands up there. We're gonna move on to talk about another kind of example of platforming, which is.
Can I just offer? Sorry, can I just offer two counter arguments to the Destiny thing? I just want to say that, like, first of all, like, the convention's happening regardless of where the Destiny shows up, and secondly, like, he's not going to be streaming it as far as I know. So if he's not like providing his own platform, and he's challenging the ideas, is that really like platforming? He's just like showing up to.
This is just logistics on this. Right? It's just logistics on this. So there's less than 100 people going to that because they are trying to do the social distancing, and they're only releasing it after the fact. So they're not streaming it to a live audience. They're only releasing it in what I assume will be their own platforms. I just tossed my ring across the floor.
So the fact that Destiny is there will boost that platform.
Yeah,
that's something that I wanted to talk on a little bit if we have
time.
Me
too.
Yeah. Listen. We do have time. The reason I just wanted to say that. Say like we're going to speak about this in over 10 minutes and then we're going to move on to the next sort of platforming kind of issue. So I don't know whose hand was up first. We'll go Demon Mama, Dario. Okay. Okay.
Dario first.
Okay, Dario first. Go.
Oof. Paid off. No, yeah, I guess.
got
Fuck.
you.
So 2 points. Okay, first one to Riley's point. I think your argument works great. If you assume that at best you're gonna get I guess a 0, and at worst you're gonna get like a negative effect, right? But I think it falls apart when you. I would say correctly assume that there's also like positive to gain, right? So if you assume at worst you can make things worse, and at best you can just make it the same, then obviously yeah, you should never take that, right? That's like a stupid bet to take, right? But I think there's lots of positives to gain individually for Jangles and for the left as a whole, right? I think you have the ability to lower the amount of people who go ultimately to Milo's side, or even bring some people over. And to the second point in terms of
well, I was gonna say, I don't think I necessarily disagree with the premise that like there certainly was benefit, like there certainly is like a positive kind of risk reward to Jangles, and congratulations, you gained a reward. Again, congratulations.
But there was no way of me knowing that going in.
Yeah, and also I will say that like the comparative cost benefit, like sort of going back to Demon Mama's point earlier, like Jangles is the much comparatively smaller creator. So yes, while he gained a significant amount of people that subscribe to him, we're still talking about someone with less than 10,000 subscribers. Whereas Milo, we're talking about like basically throwing more gasoline onto the already burning building, right? Compared to like adding some firewood to like the small little campfire outside, right? Like clearly, I would make the argument one risk is greater than the other possible reward.
Well, sure, but I think you can make that argument both ways, right? So I would argue it would be much worse. Well, not necessarily bad, but it would like technically be worse if Jangles had the huge platform and he was platforming somebody like Milo at the risk of his giant platform, like seeing that Milo could come off like as a reasonable and like some people going, or I would say that's worse than the opposite, where Jangles is like the challenger, right? Because Jangles has less to lose, right? So I mean, Jangles comparatively has more to gain and less to lose. And in terms of the just quickly, just a quick point to like the Peter Coffin thing. I think I was one of the people who was very critical of Peter Coffin on Twitter, and I was specifically very critical of them, because they said that they were ultimately most likely gonna be agreeing on a bunch of stuff with Milo. Right, and I think that is what really like hit me, because when I've heard Destiny talk about this on his stream, like going on Milo, he's planning on going in and crushing him. Right, that's his idea, and like going in and making Milo seem palpable, or like agreeing on some points, whether or not that could be justified, that sort of defeats the purpose of like going on there and what I would say is actively like trying to hurt Milo.
Yeah, and I think so if you want to launder your reputation, especially among younger people, which has literally always been Milo's thing. Milo got his big start in Gamergate, which was a lot of young gamers who got involved in that. If you want to launder your reputation with them, what better way to do that than to get a handful of clips from your conservative friendly panel with conservative guided questions with a controlled audience that all agree with you, and then getting an own or a dunk on one of the most popular political streamers in the world right now. That is my biggest criticism against Destiny, which is very similar to what my criticisms would have been against Peter Coffin. Although I would argue that in Coffin's case, it was even worse, because Peter Coffin was very, very open about, yes, agreeing with Milo on a number of things. To me, that seemed like this is like a honeypot. Like, you get in here and then he's going to put up a bunch of, Milo's going to put up a bunch of things that you can't disagree with, because it's stuff that you talk about that, that Peter Coffin has talked about all the time. Oh, the left is too rude and mean and whatever on the internet, which is, there are people that do that. This is not to write off those things, but that is Milo's entire wheelhouse. So and keep in mind also that Peter Coffin has fame from Gamergate, the exact same time that Milo Yiannopoulos was popular. These are things that people like are relying on historical amnesia to like pass up. The fact that it would be a big deal for Milo's previous like previous audience and current audience to have to get clips out of context or in context or whatever of Milo agreeing with or owning Peter Coffin. And likewise, this applies to Destiny as well, who has a massive audience. All it takes is a handful of clips for Milo Yiannopoulos to throw up on his channel, which, as Jangles also added another detail here about the fact that it's going to be posted later, probably completely cut to hell because it's being moderated and run by Lauren Chen, who's an obviously biased source. Like, this is
it's
a disaster.
not being moderated by Lauren Chen anymore.
Oh, is it not? Oh, okay. So that's
it's not any better. It's not any better. It's just it's
Still.
by Brandon Straka. So
Like
yeah,
the
not
problem-
Oh God.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the point that I'm getting at is that we're talking about platforming, and that's about the definition of a bad platform. The fact that the moderator is going to be biased, the audience is going to be biased, they're going to be able to use it to launder reputation. That's my big point on that one that I want to bring people's attention to. I think people should be aware of those sorts of things.
Yeah. Jangles.
You mind if I jump in?
Who does?
Oh, sure. Yeah, mute. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I just 2 quick points actually. So on what we were talking about just before Demon Mama came in, on whether or not Jangles could have known how well he was going to do. And Riley, I appreciate, like you said, you're just kind of getting out the important baseline.
Yeah, I
points
mean, like,
and-
all right, again, like I've seen these arguments being made before. Unfortunately, like, it's a thing that comes with the education. You learn how to make arguments that you don't necessarily always believe in, for better
Yeah,
or for
definitely,
worse.
Yeah, no, and I think someone definitely should. So I appreciate you doing that. But I feel like just to kind of like reiterate my earlier point on that, for me that it's kind of a moot point, and unless Jangles was going to come in and completely embarrass himself, which I'm sure wasn't going to happen. Then it's half and half, eh? Yeah, then it's again, for me, it's not even really a question of doing well in the debate. It's really, regardless of how well you do, you're feeding into what Milo's been looking for. So it's nice that you did well, but it's kind of Milo doesn't necessarily care about that, is what I'm trying to say. So, and that's because usually it is a very simple equation. You just go, okay, how big is their platform? How big is my platform? And what's my likelihood? What's the risk reward factor here? It's not, you can't slap that formula onto this, is what I'm trying to say. And again, I mean that's what a lot of people on Twitter and otherwise, in my opinion, just haven't really been picking up. In regards to the Destiny and Peter Coffin thing, I think I totally agree with you, Demon Mama, that that's definitely what he's going to go for. He's going to go for the classic Ben Shapiro. Hell, I mean, I think it was even Milo who was one of the first people to do that fucking during Gamergate anyway, before Ben Shapiro. The SJW destroyed with facts and logic. That's exactly, so he knows what the fuck he's doing, right? But I think the problem here, at least, is that it seems like that's going to be happening either way. So it's like, what's the answer to that then? Because all we're really saying here is that, like, okay, well, in both cases, he's going to try and do that, and we don't necessarily have control. Well, we definitely don't have control over what Destiny does, but we might be able to nudge Peter Coffin in the right direction,
Hold on, pause. This is very important. It's just in. Apparently, Peter Coffin was in my YouTube chat and kind of interested in joining. Would we be interested in that?
Yeah, definitely.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Let's have a look. So, Peter Coffin. I'll hang on. Have you got a bounce mark?
Yeah. I wanted to make sure to say it before he comes in, so people don't think like I'm running away from him, because a bunch of people think I ran away from Destiny one time. So, but no, I wouldn't mind talking to him, but I have an appointment, so I'll be still in the whereby, but I'll be like muted in the Discord if that's okay.
Okay. No worries. That's
he
fine.
left my chat. He said night folks, I'm out. Apparently, that's what my Discord chat's telling me. But hey, if you can get a hold of them, then I'm just letting you all know. All right, I'm giving you all the update. I can only convey what information I know.
And
okay.
Well, I mean,
it's glad he didn't come in here, because his ideas would have been in a coffin, huh?
I see what you did there.
By the way, Dylan, my wife likes your hat.
Oh, thank you very much.
Where did you get that hat? I see you wearing it often.
I inherited it, actually, so it's like a family hat now. I don't know why.
Oh, damn.
It's been passed down through generations, like 3 generations now.
Shit. Nice hat.
Okay, so yeah, I've got Peter a message. So if they wanna
Fuck.
if they wanna jump in, then
That'd be super chill. I have not talked to Peter yet, so this would be this would be a nice time to try that.
I know
out,
he's
you know?
aware. I know that. I mean, I know they're aware about the Milo thing.
And oh goddamn, I wanted to respond to mute, but I can't remember what my point was now. Damn it.
Yeah.
No, I asked
I haven't
like 30 minutes ago.
in both cases for the mystic thing debate, it was going to be bad either way. So Milo was going to be trying to do that dishonest clipping out either way. Does that jog your memory at all?
Yeah, actually it did. Basically what I was going to say is that the goal then in my mind would be to have the least relevant person that they could get onto there that would make the least impact, because I'm not going to lie, anybody who gets even a stretch of an own on Destiny can blow that up like clickbait. You could make 100 videos about how bad you owned Destiny or whatever, and like, so you want to get the least starstruck person. So if people would,
then.
I mean,
I will say,
yeah, that does seem like an argument for Peter Coffin.
Are you saying we need to get me on? Is that?
I mean, there's different issues with each one, right? I would say that we should have like
what can I say?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, hopefully Peter will be on in a second. We'll be able to kind of lay out their case kind of themselves. But I think the idea is that, like, if you've got an audience of rightoids, like, yeah, you can go and do the normal sort of chud dunking type stuff, right? Like, you can do that, sure. And Destiny does that well. And it's the kind of content I personally enjoy. But like, I do kind of see the idea of, like, you know, having a lefty presenting lefty ideas and being the antithesis of the triggered SJW. Like, I think that's one of the benefits that you bought Jangles, is that you weren't the triggered SJW, right? But you kind of went for the dunking type stuff.
And you also didn't agree with him, which is what would have happened.
Yeah, that was a good moment. But yeah, I think that, like, I don't know. I guess I kind of see the value. And if you've got a bunch of rightoids that are like baying for blood, yes, we're gonna trigger that SJW so hard. And then someone comes out and they're like, actually, I want to just talk about my ideas and what I think about things, and I actually agree with some of your points. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some.
You're
value
such a
in that.
bitch ass trying to fucking corner me into saying some racist shit.
Bro, dude, listen. You know full damn well you fucking soiling.
I will say that I've had like 5 or 6 conversations with Destiny at this point, and each time I talk to him specifically about foreign policy, like, which is something he doesn't really know a lot about, which he admits to. I like, each time it's like really helped my channel. It's really blown me up, and now I'm like, I'm just like, I'm doing much better now because of that. So I mean, it is true that happens, but it's also, I don't think Destiny would go into an event like MythCon. Like, I'm gonna go into this knowing that the topic I'm discussing I don't know a lot about. You know, where he knew.
By the way, the topic is sticks and stones may break my bones, but can words actually hurt me? That's the topic between Destiny and Milo.
Yeah, I think something as vague as that, he could like easily just drag it to anywhere he kind of wants to drag it into. I mean, like, I think like Milo will just like grandstand for a little bit and he'll just like drag it to an area he wants to bring it. I mean, that's so vague and so like, can words.
But isn't that what benefits that type of person?
I
like,
mean,
what benefits a demagogue?
I mean, it can benefit a demagogue, but I think that he's dealt with so many people who have done that in the past that I think he's the best if there's anyone that was going to go there, Destiny is the best person to do it. I haven't seen Peter Coffin's ability to like combat people who's going to like, you know, benefit off of vagueness or do anything like that. I haven't seen him do it in the past, at least.
I've only seen one Peter Coffin debate, and it was with Destiny, and it wasn't for people who saw it. And again, like, Peter, if you're watching, I'm not meaning this necessarily in a bad way, but it wasn't the greatest, constructively. But you know, I trust Destiny, right? Like, for as bad, like, I think I essentially adopted that. It was a bit of a sleeper debate. It was. I won't say anything more because I don't want to like shit on him or whatever.
This is what I'll say, because I do believe I need to be honest here. So I never knew about Peter Coffin until that debate, and I kind of left it as like, oh, he's clueless, and that's how my view of Peter Coffin.
Okay, well, don't worry, Dylan. You're about to be able to tell Peter Coffin to their face what you think. So here we go.
Oh hey, hey, Peter, you're here. Hello there.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I think this is our first time talking. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, I've actually seen some of your stuff. I've liked what you do.
Aw, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so look, I just want to.
It was something last week. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble remembering what it was.
No, it's all good.
It was, it was something that you put a counter argument against something else. I thought it was really good. I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember it right now though.
Okay, so listen. Obviously, we've got a few people here that have got some anti-Peter Coffin takes. Okay. Now.
That's all right.
I don't want it to turn into a dog.
More than a few people that are like that.
Sure.
Oh, Peter, could you just mute yourself on the whereby, please?
Oh, sorry.
So you're not echoing. Thank you.
There we go. Perfect.
Great.
Better?
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I think probably the best thing to do, if I throw it over to you, Peter, I'll give you like say 3 minutes just to kind of lay out your kind of thoughts on the Milo thing, and we'll go from there if that's okay.
Sure. Well, so as you can hear, exactly is when my kids are throwing stuff. So for me, the Milo thing, it's not really necessarily an example of what I would call something that I think would be like a great turnout or anything like that. What I think is that you go sort of into enemy territory, not necessarily with the object of convincing, one of the, 100 or however many people are attending, but rather ending up in a video that gets shared around, which is most likely what would have happened, in my opinion. Pardon me for not really necessarily being prepared. I had left watching the stream, so I don't really know the exact context I'm in at this point. But my thought was more along the lines of, there's not going to be a whole lot of my audience personally that really cares a lot about this thing. There's not really going to be a lot of people who listen to what I have to say, who really, really entertain any of the ideas that the skeptics, or more further the Milo Yiannopoulos of the world, really think. Now that the reason why that matters is because it is not my platform that this was going to occur on. It was a platform that had established itself elsewhere. Milo was going to be invited to it regardless, and I would rather have, in my opinion, somebody stating leftist viewpoints rather than liberal viewpoints in resistance to this. Not necessarily from the perspective that I'm going to quote unquote win, but I like the idea that there is more counterpoints put directly in front of these people rather than through the filter of their personalities being able to create those counterpoints to present to them, like to edit or contextualize.
And just to push back on that just a little bit, like
Sure.
I think with given Milo Yiannopoulos' past and the way that he engages with politics, which is very much he's a propagandist for sure.
Well, yeah,
I think
but we all are.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
for
the
sure.
thing.
But I think that I think we can state that Milo Yiannopoulos' particular style is particularly he like almost like a preacher. He doesn't really talk much on substance ever. He mostly just goes for pure duck. So with that in mind, the risk to platforming him versus the
I wouldn't be
chance of-
platforming him, however, though it is the MythCon that would be platforming him.
You're right. I should have said legitimizing the platform, which in my mind does fall under platforming. I think we can recognize that. What's that? Oh, I mean, that's fine. But I mean, do you at least admit, recognize that there could be some risks to granting a legitimacy and granting something for
what kind of risk?
Oh, like the risk that he's able to use that to further launder his reputation and rebuild a presence online as one of the most toxic right-wing figures?
Milo Yiannopoulos is funded by the Mercers. Okay, it's not a situation in which it really matters how legitimate he is in, let's say, left-wing spaces or what have you. Like he has access to people like the Mercers, to people like what's his name, Gavin McInnes, who has secured a bunch of funding pays him for a weekly show on that nonsense network they have going. I mean, here's the thing, like, legitimacy is not something that you get from like me saying, okay, I will appear at your thing. Legitimacy is a thing that is granted via some form of power structure actually asserting itself. Like, here's the problem with I don't have the kind of power I think that you might think that I have if you think that I legitimate uh, something like better discourse. It's just that's not true.
Well, I think I would just bring up that like having money going towards you is not the same thing as having the social capital. And for somebody like Milo,
Sure.
whose entire campaign, like his entire, or sorry, not campaign, his entire career was sort of predicated on being like being persecuted and having these big figures that he can be openly criticized by, and then he can put the tape over his mouth and go, oh, I'm being persecuted. That's his entire brand. So to me, going on there to a very
Amazing.
I mean, admittedly, what we seem to have come to a conclusion of is that it was a pretty small immediate outlook, but that gives him fodder for fueling his return to polite society by laundering his reputation, the very thing that got him out of the public mind in the first place. Not that won't be possible without it, but that it certainly can contribute to it. And I think maybe you perhaps even underestimate your own influence, like in that personal ability.
Well,
like,
okay, well, here I would go ahead and I'd push back on that a little bit more on account. I'm just go ahead and say, like, he's being platformed by right wingers. He was deplatformed by right wingers, and the people who will bring him back will be right wingers. It won't be left wingers. It won't be people. It won't be me making the choice to go into their territory and say, no, you guys are wrong. That will not be the thing that legitimates them. It's just I don't understand that argument at all.
Yeah, but I think there's an argument to be made, and because I think you're right in your assessment. But I also think that there's an argument to be made that you can gain legitimacy for right wingers by destroying left wingers, right? By being very effective, argumentative against left wingers. So yes, while I do agree, you will not directly be platforming him, and this is something that I also disagree with people who said that. I do, however, see some merit to the argument that you could potentially give sort of legitimacy within the right wing to him if you were to perform poorly.
I get that.
If I could, I actually want to ask a little bit about this, just because I don't know all the circumstances, and it'll affect my opinion on this. So, Peter, so originally, just to make sure I understand the circumstances, originally you set up to where you were going to be debating Milo at this event, right?
Well,
and then
my understanding was that it was some form of panel, like a panel discussion of some type. I'm sure that they would have attempted to make it more debate-like, at least, but it wasn't framed as a debate. And like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't have, acted as though it was a debate. However, I would say, yeah, that's a fair. That's a fair assessment, yeah.
And then again, just from me watching on the side on Twitter, pretty much after that news came out, like everyone on Twitter just like exploded. It's like, oh my God, you're bringing back Milo. Oh my God, you're platforming Milo. Like that was essentially the response, right? And so there was a bit of time, and eventually you were like, all right, I'm gonna back out, and then Destiny replaced you. It seems. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah. I won't go into the exact reasons there was pressure applied to me.
Milo is not dead, lol.
Affected my livelihood and outside of YouTube, and I did not want to, incur that further, so to speak. So what I did, yeah. So yeah, I backed out of it. However, I would say ultimately the result is going to, like, it's somebody, as much as, like, there are things that I agree with Destiny about, of course, but from the perspective of exactly where he's coming from with his politics, he's going to ultimately sort of legitimize a lot of the same power structures that Milo Yiannopoulos works to legitimize. And I think that he's going to do that, and Destiny has a much larger audience than I do. and B, I don't think will work as hard to push back on certain things like essentialism, on certain things like I have a criticism of the market, for instance, that I know for a fact Destiny would not attempt. I generally think that like I probably would have brought less attention to Milo and probably a more left-oriented counterpoint to it. Now, whether they took that fairly or not, I can't really.
Jangles to respond, but I also have something to.
Mook, do you have
ask about
something
that.
before? I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, it might be a bit of topic change, so maybe we don't need to dive into it and people can get in their words first. But I think talking about, whether or not we'd want Peter or Destiny, I think Peter, yeah, you are definitely obviously a lot more left than Destiny, but I think in this specific case, one of the concerns was that, well, is there even going to be any opportunity to bring up those points anyway? I mean, you said a criticism of the market, but based on the topic of this debate, I can't imagine anything remotely like that coming up. So maybe in practice, just maybe in practice, you're going to end up making the same kind of arguments Destiny does anyway.
Possibly, yeah. I acknowledge that.
Sorry, just real quick. Secondly, I think the other main concern a lot of people had, and you DM'd me about this earlier, about whether or not you'd say you'd agree with some of Milo's points on social issues or something. And I was just wondering if maybe you could elaborate on what that was about. If no one else wanted to quickly jump in on what we were talking about before. So
the gentleman who isn't here anymore,
Monkey.
He said that I agree. I have some problematic views and agree with Milo on some social stuff, and I would say that's probably not true. I can't say one way or another whether you consider my views problematic, but I definitely don't agree with Milo on some social stuff. I think that's really characterizing me in a way that either hasn't paid much attention to me personally or believes, certain things that are said about me.
So here's kind of like my concern coming in on this, right? Because as I've been growing and as I've been getting to know other content creators, right, I've also gotten to know like a variety of different kinds of content creators, people who are more skilled at doing different things, right? Some people do some really awesome video essays and you're one of them. Congratulations. Some people do, and some people are more geared towards debate and sort of like live, like on the spot discussion, right? Like brains are just, wired very differently, right? Yeah. I could talk about some people I know personally, but I don't want to bring them into the discussion. But so the point being, right, I'm not even saying that you would necessarily make like the wrong arguments. I probably agree with you, or I don't know, like I'd have to like sit down and think about like who between you and Destiny I agree with more. Yeah. But like, I think that there is some utility to at least, and again, like this isn't saying anything negative about anyone here, but there is some utility in having someone who's like more skilled or like primarily does debate content doing a debate, right? Like that carries less risk of having the opposition, quote unquote, look good if that's one of the harms we're trying to minimize. The deep money aside,
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna push back against. I would say that as far as debate skills, Destiny is definitely better than me. I'm not going to pretend that like I am like this amazing, jump into any Twitch stream and just come off amazing, totally dunk on the other person. I'm not that kind of person. I am a person, I do talk a lot, I have discussions a lot, and forgive me for being a little bit unprepared for this in any way, because I do tend to prepare things. I do actually tend to study. I had been studying Milo Yiannopoulos for several weeks. I had been, getting content from the censored.tv thing. I'd identified, several key points in strategy that I had
share your pain
to use, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
You and Jangles might share something there.
Jangles, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. His, proclivity to immediately move towards flattery or trying to change the subject, those types of things. My intention is more to attempt to direct things away from debate and more towards conversation, because I think that a person like him isn't really that capable of having a conversation that is in normal person terms, and I think that he is actually a lot more far removed from the average everyday person than I think a lot of people even sort of think about. Like, I think that the main reason he's been able to gain the kind of traction that he's been able to is because he has, I think it was mentioned at some point, that he's the sort of ultimate edgy troll. And he's not even really that, but it's worked for him, so to speak. And I think that that was more the angle I intended to take. And it might have bored the crap out of some people, I'm not going to lie, but
Right. And I suppose that the only thing I would say to that is, like, I don't doubt that you probably would have made some awesome, like, policy or, like, economic arguments, right? But I think that there's also something to be said that there are certain people where you cannot take that kind of an argument with them, right? Like, there are some people who you will spit, like, the strongest facts at, and they will just try to laugh it off, or they'll try to make, like, a bunch of ad homs, or they'll just try to, like, poke fun at you, or just, like, vaguely gesture hypocrisy at the audience, right? And that requires, like, it does require a different kind of preparation all the same, but just a different kind of it, right? Like, I recently had a debate where that was essentially the entirety of it, right? There wasn't really too much arguing on the merits of any particular issue, just learning how to deal with, like, someone who was, like, trying to emotionally manipulate me in the audience, you know? So, like, I guess the only thing I'm trying to say is that, like, I'm not saying that you would have done bad, but, like, it, you know, the only justification
I will say
I
didn't really intend to just go with, like, presenting facts. Again, I'm entirely unprepared, so I don't have any humor that I can bring to the topic here or anything like that. But, you know, I regard things more like, again, you've seen my video essays. I don't really try to just put a dry collection of facts in front of people, and that's not really what my strategy would have been either. However, I probably would not have been the quote unquote, you know, same kind of raucous debate that people might be accustomed to either.
I want to throw it to Jangles and then Dario.
So this was a point that was brought up like 45 minutes ago, but it's really, really relevant now. Someone brought up the idea of, like, this is like infotainment, or otherwise the debates are primarily entertainment first. And I think that hits the nail on the head. A lot of people, very few people are going into debates going, I want to learn something new. I want to learn more about this topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at least that's my perception of it. You're there because you want your side to win. And I think that's perfectly fine. That's not a bad thing. That's not a bash against you as a person. I'm that person, and I don't want to bash myself because that would hurt my feelings. But there's still some utility in, even if I think we're overestimating the impact of the ideas in the debate, we are looking for our side to win and look out better. So there is something to be said for, because they've studied this in, like, sports teams. So when one team loses, that team's testosterone levels will drop. I know we're getting into testosterone memes, but basically saying they feel bad about it. But what they also found is that the audience, like the fans of that team, they'll also see a drop in that as well. So, like, you know, that visceral, like, oh, my team just lost.
Making the low T arguments.
I'm making the low T arguments. I'm doing the low T memes. All right. We'll talk about. Never mind. Debates are stored in the balls.
Accumulating more testosterone as more debates.
I mean, wait, because this actually be the 5-head move? Like, Milo's whole goal now is just to lose as many debates so he can just sell more testosterone like pills. It's like the ultimate marketing scheme.
Yeah, the real workaround. The real long con.
Milo is actually feminizing the right.
All right.
True.
Amazing.
Before we discovered the true motivations of all this to make all the femboys on the right, which, you know, isn't a bad thing. There is something to be said of this is entertainment, and when your side loses and it kind of makes you feel bad, you might not be as likely to go back to them. Because the internet is a big place, and you might look for your other source to be your team in the future. So I think ideas are definitely important, and ideas are part of winning debates. But, you know, sometimes it's just about, like, taking someone like, who's this big provocative jerk, taking them down a peg. And that can be a perfectly good
You did a very good job of that, might I add, in yours, because you did get him to whine a lot. And that works, in my opinion.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I noticed, because I remember seeing on Twitter, Peter, you sort of tweeted out about Jangles gaining kind of subs and stuff, and I kind of read that as, like, you were highlighting that's what people didn't want for you, right? That's the reason people
I think
were going
that to some extent, a lot of people did not want me to get attention from doing something with Milo. And even if I had, gone in and done okay or a little all right, good, decent, whatever, I think I probably would have gotten some attention from people that I wouldn't have otherwise. And people, there's a certain sect of people, the people who I think it was mentioned much earlier, people who wish terminal cancer on me, who very much really don't like that kind of thing happening. Anything that is positive for Peter Coffin is negative for people who want Peter Coffin to have terminal cancer.
I think everyone on the panel can roundly
No. I don't think any of the panel.
Yeah. To be clear,
I don't think any of the people on this panel
that's
agree
a
with
bit,
that kind of rhetoric.
It will not be the next
Terrible.
debate topic.
Yikes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
has anyone
really,
got
really,
any? Oh shit!
really,
Yeah.
like nobody is like
Oh,
deserving
fuck.
of that kind of treatment, but especially not
Hello?
you, Peter.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I
Yeah, we can
interrupted
hear
you.
you.
We hear you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you're there.
right, what's
I just
going on?
interrupted you.
Everything
Sorry.
all right?
Amazing.
Did we lose Judd?
Chud.
Mod,
Oh my
you
god,
there?
I blame
is Chud
myself.
gone?
I'm here.
Oh no,
we can
lost
we
our
can
mod.
keep it going.
Gone?
We can keep it going
Is
without
everything
him.
all right?
Alright. I had
I'll
a
pick out the hippy dippy skills quick. Okay,
Go on,
everybody keep
go on,
going.
Dario.
no, yeah, I had a point actually, and like for me, because I did feel like people were treating you a bit unfairly, Peter. Well, I do think like in the format, I do think Destiny would do better. Just because I think sort of he brings the skill set that I think is necessary. Like I don't
Yeah.
think it would have been impossible for you to do like pretty well, like depending on like the strategy. And I would just reserve my judgment until I saw it. Right? I don't think it's fair to judge somebody preemptively. And I do
Well,
like
I
I was.
think.
No, yeah,
Sorry.
like I was arguing here on the panel before, I do think that there is positives to gain from something like that, right? And like you said, you're not platforming him on your platform, right? You're going into enemy territory, as you yourself put,
Yeah.
right? And like if you don't put it on your channel, if you don't put it on your Twitter or whatever, it's really limited, like what kind of like what from your audience he has to gain, right? So I don't think it's impossible for you to come out ahead in that situation. I think it would just depend, and I would hope at least, like that's the only thing that I sort of said, that I really hope that you sort of did your research and sort of came prepared with sort of not fighting against the arguments, but fighting against Milo as a person as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was a consideration I had taken.
I'll also say, just like from my arguments earlier about like the merits of we already just talked about it. To be clear, like the way that people treated you, absolutely abhorrent. Do not support that whatsoever. That was pretty fucking shitty. All right. I do want to make that clear so you don't get like mixed feelings or mixed signals.
No,
from me.
I don't think anybody here would support anything like that. I think that's very below any of the arguments anybody's made here today.
Okay, cool. So, does anyone? Is there any other points on this particular topic that wanted to discuss?
Yeah. Although
Go ahead.
I'm actually just saying I have work tomorrow.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I actually need to dip. But
Yeah, no
thanks for
worries,
having me
mate.
on. It's been
No problem.
It's been good. I hope you guys have a fun, productive conversation. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Lexi.
Nice talking to you.
Thanks,
Muke.
easy. I tried.
Yeah, catch you soon. Cheers.
Bye, Muke.
Bye.
Yeah,
She just said Muke. She went with Muke.
Yeah. So I mean, does anyone have any sort of further
I mean, I can just reiterate what I had said earlier before Peter was here, which was like, my big concern is that my big concern with this particular issue and with platforming in general is I guess I often sort of put the sort of like audience transfer stuff to a second, because I feel like it's really hard to actually come to any hard truth about that. It's really, really hard to say. And the only thing we can really look at in my mind is to compare to other similar actors. So when I look at someone like Milo or like an extreme demagogue, like a Rush Limbaugh figure, I look and draw comparisons to people like young earth creationists and flat earthers and people who use extremely emotional rhetoric often to sell sort of extreme premises. And in my mind, my big concern with this, with the particular debate that you were looking to engage with Milo, is that the platform that they were providing seemed almost designed to buy him clips that he could use to then launder his reputation, which in the big picture, when we think about what the impact of that is, might seem minor, but like Milo Yiannopoulos used his speeches on campuses, his appearances on TV to directly target people. Like, I mean, he outed trans people during his speeches. So I feel like that's not to say anything about anybody's actions in regard to him, just to state like what type of person we were dealing with. And I think earlier on here, we all said like the situation with Milo is also kind of unique because he is a particularly unique bad actor who had a particularly spectacular downfall. But yeah, those are sort of the way that I look at it. And I do have a sort of analysis, at least the way that I approach it is like a lot of demagogues aim to manipulate discussions to be favorable to people with existing biases, to use those to recruit and to use those to grow. So that's my big concern about platforming. I don't think that we should never talk with anyone with extreme opinions. In fact, I would argue against that. I think we need to be incredibly careful about it. But yeah, I just wanted to restate that because Peter wasn't here when I said that originally.
Sure.
I mean, one thing I wanted to throw in there, and this is what frustrated me about the conversation, because I was actually off Twitter, Peter, when you were going to go on and do this Milo thing, and people were sort of telling me about it in my streams. Peter's going to debate Milo. I was like, okay, what's that about? I looked into it. I did an entire stream about like deplatforming and used Milo as a case study. And it's like, despite being deplatformed from like numerous social media platforms, live events, all this other shit, literally, 20 examples of him being deplatformed. He's still here, right? He's still got a YouTube channel. Yeah. He's a particularly resilient character. Like what? He was in $1 million worth of debt like a year ago, and here he
claimed
is
that. Like, let's just go ahead and say, in my opinion, like the fact that the media structure and various personalities take him at his word when he makes claims like that. I don't understand why people do that. Like, we're talking about these sort of right-wing figures, which are generally like, if you search like with Jordan Peterson or whatnot, you can find connections where he's accepted funding from the Koch brothers. You can find a lot of events where they put him in front of, sympathetic ears in colleges and in that. I don't think that if a right-wing person goes on to a public platform and says, I'm in financial distress, or I am in this thing, which may garner sympathy for people who have similar views to them, I don't know that we should just take them at their word. And I think that that's ultimately what people did. I don't really think there was a lot of research done into whether or not he's actually desolate. I think that is an example actually of something that was sort of beneficial to him in regards to the left. Like, as was stated earlier, like his YouTube channel still exists. Recently, particularly, he's done a very good job of rebounding in his traffic. I don't know if that's been discussed or not, but the fact is, like, people think that he's gone. People think that he is beaten and he's, cast off into the shadows, never to return again. And the thing is that benefits him. That view of him benefits him significantly, in my opinion, because he's allowed to then operate without the kind of scrutiny that if people are actually spending their time, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of various different.
Yeah, if you go to the Better Discourse conference, if you go to the MythCon page, the Better Discourse conference where he's being hosted, at an event where he was invited to alongside other big names and also me, where he is headlining probably the main panel, he still used the picture with him in the duct tape. He still is trying. Yeah, he's still trying to put out that he's been silenced.
He benefits from
rolled like
that
across
image.
his mouth. Are you serious?
That's exactly his narrative, and that's the thing that I think that people have let it. Like, one of the big points that was brought against me was he was gone. Why can't you just let him stay gone? And the thing is he's not. He's never gone. Like, these people who have institutional connections, they aren't gone until those institutional connections are gone, which usually means the institutions themselves are the actual problem.
Well, I should say, like, I mean, I don't tend to agree with like the idea that like, oh, they're the idea that like Milo was gone into the shadows. I mean, it's pretty clear he took a pretty major hit to his social platform.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
the thing is though that like much like right-wing media, in fact, this is really common on Fox News, and I've done even a couple of streams on this about how they use amnesia and laundering reputations like regularly. This is something they do all the time, but they can't do that by themselves. They need they need like legitimate figures, whether it's like CNN or whatever, to make a stink so that they can make people forget about the bad stuff that happened. In the case with Milo, like the big reason, like you said it yourself, like he was canceled by the right, but the way that that those institutional figures, they can't just put him back up, because even though they like him and they think he was great at the time, obviously, like there's a lot of like on the ground distaste for his takes on, you know, the whole pedophilia stuff.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
with that in
point on that
mind,
one.
like, what's that?
I also have a point to make.
Oh yeah, so like the thing I just wanted to bring up again is like, even though he has that like the institutional, like he might have that institutional backing, but he still will need he would need from other people the ability to actually launder that reputation. And in my mind, the best way to like prevent him from coming back from the shadows is to continually reassert the things that he did wrong, to continually keep those old things there so that the right can never forget that, as opposed to giving him opportunities to farm clips or make a prominent lefty figure agree with him or something like that. Those are the things that in my mind would help him launder his reputation, which is something that they're hoping for and relying on, in my mind.
There's something that I would want to say on that reputation. So if you look up, and I'm sure Peter, you can vouch for this as well. If you look up Milo Yiannopoulos, most savage moments, best moments, highlights, stuff like that, you don't see a whole lot of him like waxing soliloquy or waxing poetic. I just completely tried to sound smart and failed. You don't see him talking a whole lot about policy, because that wasn't why he got popular. I think it's pretty fair to say that it's not his ideas that got him popular, insofar as like he is like policy positions and political ideas and stuff like that. What got him popular is that he was shitting on SJWs. And you find, and this was kind of like the whole rise of like the anti-SJW and why they kind of shifted fascist at the towards now, because when your whole ideology is shitting on this group of people, you're willing to have strange bedfellows in order to do it. So it wasn't that he had the great ideas and brought them over with the ideas, is that he shit on these people. An audience who likes seeing those people get shit on realized it, and then okay, they started making the ideas. They started like saying the jokes and doing the rhetoric, not because they really believed in it at first, but because it made the SJWs mad. And so when you think about that, when he comes back, they didn't like him for his ideas anyway. He's not putting forth policy positions. He's not putting forth anything. In my debate, it was like JQ stuff that we've, and standard talking, conservative talking points. These are old ideas. It's his rhetoric. So like, if they'll be willing to forgive the pedophilia stuff if he does what he originally did good enough, because that's why they were interested in the first place.
Well, and the other thing that I would like to put in there is that the way that things work algorithmically, and as far as how content is put forward as like quote unquote popular on all of these platforms, there is, no matter what, an incentive to have somebody opposite whoever is going to get attention. And here's the thing. If you do have institutional backing, it may not be that you go on CNN, but you're going to go somewhere, and eventually you're going to get more and more people in front of you. And whether you're going there unopposed or opposed, it does actually have a difference. And something like this Better Discourse event, I believe, is him kind of being able to go into the ring of logic and reason, small audience, and to reassert who he is. Exactly what Jangles said, the sort of dunking on SJW stuff. And the point is to reintroduce him on the peripheral. And you might think that having a left-wing figure might help legitimize. And what I would argue is that there's kind of a market incentive to legitimize him one way or another. The left-wing figure, I'm sorry. The left-wing figure provides at least a counterpoint as that laundering. Like the event itself is the laundering. It's not me doing the laundering. It's the event, so to speak.
See, that's where I kind of disagree, because I feel like the audience is going to be biased anyway. They're not going to be particularly open. Like, I mean, it's possible, of course. All things are possible, but in my mind, like, this is a devoted
Well, they're
audience.
rehabbing.
And
What I'm saying is they're rehabbing his reputation for that audience. He was canceled by the right wing. The people who had a problem with him were right-wing people, and they're putting him in front of right-wing people.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
true, but they
the
also
point
like
is-
his career previous to that was owning the libs, which is like I would argue that's one of the biggest things that like right-wing audiences love, is like
Libs
owning
didn't
a
always
lib.
need to be there, though.
What's that?
The libs didn't always need to be there for him to dunk on them.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually
that's
really
true.
easy to dunk on somebody who you strawmans.
I mean,
a lot of the
that's
clips,
true,
a lot of the Savage
but
clips and stuff, where
in
him
the-
like talking about the
again-
strawman SJW.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Obviously, like Milo's a deeply dishonest person, but again, in the bigger picture, once you zoom out of the scope of like the actual audience that's in that room, giving Milo like an opportunity to get, I mean, obviously again, we've just said he's incredibly dishonest. He's going to clip stuff out of context. In my mind, the way to effectively ensure that he stays in the shadows and can't be laundered would be like almost to blockade him of the content he needs most to come back. Because if he doesn't own any libs, if he doesn't ride off of the coattails of that, he can't come back. The only thing that exists is everybody remembers that. In my mind, I don't think that Milo Yiannopoulos is going to be able to make a comeback unless he's able to do something spectacular, which in my mind, and keep in mind my criticisms of this particular event go to Destiny as well, who's taken the spot, because I mean, the slightly different situation, but I still think that it's a really bad idea. And in fact, I think it might even be worse, depending. Like, I don't know. I feel like that does grant legitimacy, and the reason they're seeking those out is probably for a reason.
I sort of I kind of really disagree with sort of the well, not specifically what you're saying, but what you're kind of implying, because I think that sort of misses the point. And I think it's really important to consider that I think the reason why this event is structured the way that it did or is, and what they're trying to achieve is they don't need like the left wing, right? They don't need to convert like leftists over, right? What they're trying to do is to restore Milo's reputation with the right wing, right? That is the point. So it doesn't matter which left wing or liberal person they bring on, as long as there's somebody there to be a punching bag for Milo.
Then why do they seek
Even
out
just-
big
they could
figures,
even-
well-known figures?
Well, here's the thing. It could even not be anybody. Like, they could play a video and he could stand up and go, look
Yeah.
at how stupid they are.
I was about
And
ready to say
they'd all-
they've paid for the
Oh,
they've paid for the
stupid.
tickets. They paid
So, I
for the
mean, like-
tickets. They paid for the hotel room. They paid for all the meals. He's coming. He doesn't
Yeah.
have
Right,
to
but
talk
again,
against
though,
anybody.
but then he's talking. This is focusing entirely on the scope of the actual convention, which we've already admitted is the minority of people that are going to be affected by this potential event. In my mind, like this entire conversation has nothing to do with winning over minds. It has to do with being able to give Milo content that he can distract from his past, that he can create spectacle again, spectacle by
Well,
debating a
again,
big leftist figure or whatever.
Well, he doesn't even have to do that, though. Again, they could literally play a video of, any of the greatest hits of, like, the.
Well, if that was true,
quote-unquote
why would they
dumb
seek out
SJWs.
leftist figures?
Yeah,
It's
I think
obviously better to have live, real things of a real person who's
Sure, I
famous.
understand that, but like, here's the thing: you could take any clip from anything, and you could genuinely create something viral within the confines of the niche audience that we're talking about, and
Do you know
that's
the clip he would
ultimately,
need?
I think. What's that?
Do you know the clip he would need to gain popularity again?
What?
Ladies and gentlemen, Milo Yiannopoulos, and the date is 8/16/2020. That's it. That's the clip. He's back.
I agree. I entirely agree with that point. Like, it needs to be shown that he is back, that he is doing this stuff, and it doesn't matter who is there. Now, does it matter that could it potentially be like bad for me? Yes, absolutely. But let's go ahead and say this: like, the left is more than happy to disavow me at any point. I'm not exactly regarded as a quote unquote legitimate figure on the left. And if I were, I don't think that people would be spending all of their time attempting to distance themselves from me and paint me as some sort of an evil person, which is something that people do on a
You do have a
pretty
big fan
regular
base,
basis.
though.
Yeah, like to be entirely fair, like once you get to a certain point in like this sort of leftist space, like because there is a lot of division on the left, you're naturally going to be, you know, demonized by like someone on here. Like there's so many different factions on the left that just don't exist on the right.
Sure.
I mean, like even they like the people closer to the center will gladly, even if they don't say it explicitly, they will shake hands and walk down the street skipping with Nazis, right? If it will advance their interests.
Yes,
like
I agree.
they do not mind. But people on the left do. I don't know if that says something good or something bad that we're, you know, like that issue exists. I'll leave that to y'all.
Yeah.
But
no,
yeah.
I
But like the issue,
I think that like the intention, it comes from a good place of like trying to, you know, I don't know the word purity, but you know, trying to make sure that everyone's, you know, doing the correct thing, so to speak. But yeah, I think that the impact is bad because we just end up cannibalizing each other and going at each other's throats all the time and dunking each other and you know, playing into like the gamified mechanics of these platforms like Twitter.
I think there is a third option that we're sort of, I guess, sort of skirting by, and I think the third option here is that I think this is a mistake by them. Right, it's a mistake by them to bring somebody like Destiny on, because I think it would be better for them to just bring like somebody who could be like a punching bag and create some viral clips for Milo. I even think it would be a mistake for them to bring Peter on, like because Peter is also somebody who has like a presence, who would be able to at least like bring some arguments, right? Like just bring some nobody who could be a punching bag. Or I think having a person there is better than having a video. But like
I want to make.
I'm not saying that.
I want to. Like I just really quick want to make some commentary. I think that people acknowledge that, like, yeah, if we have just like a clip of Milo saying something at an event, that's going to provide some utility. Like that will certainly, like, to an extent, you know, draw traffic to him. But I think it's also pretty hard to deny that, like, something to the effect of, and again, like, you know, we're paraphrasing here, but something to the effect of Milo Yiannopoulos destroys Peter Coffin. I spit all over my camera. Destroys Peter Coffin in one-on-one debate, right, or something to that effect, right? I mean, like, people will eat that shit. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what will happen, but like that's what I think that they're trying to go for, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like the intended goal.
I mean, yeah. I would say that most of the time that would be the obvious desired result. But I'll say I don't know that it's. I'm not saying this to like say I am some superior debater, because I'm certainly not. But I don't know that it's as. I mean, if you again watch Jangles debate, I think that there's a vast overstatement of Milo Yiannopoulos' skill as, you know, an orator and an argument creator and or deliverer. I think he's not really as powerful as I think a lot of people maybe kind of think. Like, to use one of their terms, his power level is not really actually that high.
Actually, hold on. I have to spin some conspiracy theory for a second. I do. Because what I do not want people to do is to get to a place of complacency. Because let's be clear, Jangles, you had a debate with Milo, and that went over great, and that was all well and good, and that helped you grow. There is a substantively larger event that is just off in the distance, right? And it sounds like, and maybe this is just me realizing I'm the frog in the water. I don't know. But I want to make sure that people don't go in with this expectation that, oh, Milo is this sad whatever that appeared against Jangles, and everyone has like a super low expectation. Then he comes out and does as well as he always used to, and just completely blows people out of the fucking water. That's a
very good point.
Yeah. So and again, I'm not like, I don't want to get to like conspiracy land, but I do want to make sure that people aren't like just kind of like going in with this idea that he's going to be someone that he ends up not being,
and
or that there's a risk
on
in
that.
Being.
I was gonna bring up an example from and like there was a really, maybe some of you know him, a really infamous young Earth creationist named Ken Ham, who was known for being like, I mean, he's almost a joke. Like any person who's like, who can analyze those points is just like, what this guy's talking about. And he would doggedly pursue debates with people like Bill Nye. I think he actually got a debate with Bill Nye, and if I remember correctly, I may be misremembering this, but I seem to recall Bill Nye expressing regret for engaging in that debate because he had no intention of engaging in good faith. He got owned, but his point is to publicize his own career, to get that voice out there to those fringe people who he might be able, again, scoop in. And that's my concern with certain voices like this, is that in the case of, to just draw a bit of a distinction between the two different types of platforms we're talking about here, in Jangles' debate, it's on a neutral platform with which pulls in a lot of people who are there specifically to hear different ideas. Like modern day debates' entire branding is based around hearing different ideas. That's not the case with the convention that we're talking about. That is very clearly designed to be set up to either get you to agree with him on some points which they can use, or perhaps to give him an opportunity to get a dunk on you, in my mind. Which that I think is actually really important, because those the way platforms are constructed, and the fact that there's a moderator in place. I think now the moderator has changed for the conference. I don't know at this point, but at the point that
I
this was
haven't been
being
keeping
discussed.
up with it personally.
Yeah, it's Brandon Straka, who is not better.
Okay, so yeah, so my worry there is that the platform is designed to be favorable and to grant like favorable footage, to grant all these things that can be used as tools to like publicize somebody, to reach out, much like some of these very, very successful young earth creationists did the same thing. It was go and get regularly owned, where everybody who disagrees with them would conclude that they're owned, but they were able to use that to reach out to people who would then donate to their funds and stuff. That's the thing that I get concerned about, is that that it's very hard to with certain types of demagogues, it's very hard to actually make a favorable platform where it does anything but spread their message further, and that is concerning to me.
Well, there's one thing that I would like to say in combat to that. Like, the left is not a particularly large demographic of, like, why aren't we doing stuff like that?
I thought the radical left was in
We are.
control of everything.
Yeah, I know,
Like,
right?
the
This
point
is
is,
don't
why
we have
are-
large?
like-
Don't we have corporate America on our side?
I mean, that's my point. My point is,
Yeah.
like, if that's such a problem with them, why aren't we going in and invading their spaces? Why aren't we doing that? Like, I don't understand.
I can actually address that. Like, I think the reason is because the way that you become like extreme right wing and the way that you become extreme left wing are very different. And like right wing audiences are like predicated on like a lot of thought terminating cliches, and you see this is especially true when you get to particular extreme, and that's not really the case in most leftist spaces. Maybe there are some fringe groups that are like that, but that's really not the case. Like, there, as we've talked about multiple times on this panel alone, like the left is fractured. There's like 100 different viewpoints.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
That's not the case. The conclusions, even though there's a bunch of different names for stuff on the right, they're basically, their conclusions are all very similar, and the outcomes that they aim for and their tactics are pretty similar. And so that's why I think that we can't really do the same thing, because the way that the right propagates their message is by basically like spraying out lots and lots of very emotive stuff that's actually, if you take the time to debunk it, it's quite easy to debunk, but there's so much of it that you can never possibly get through all of it. We don't really have the ability to do that in the same way. I do think that there is room for that, but I think that where most leftists are looking to pull from and to encourage from is not from the far right, but rather from the soft right and the center, like the center and like the libs. Like, I think that's really the audience that most leftists can actually reach without very specialized approach. And I can say this from being someone who grew up in a highly indoctrinated space. It is incredibly hard to get out of that mindset, because you are trained to shut off any sort of critiques. And so for me, it took like a very personal experience of exploring philosophy on my own, having a very close friend who challenged me and stuff like that. Whereas from going from like a lib position, once I had become a lib, going from lib to left was like, oh, I'm just chasing ideas. I can go literally research whatever I want or I'm interested in. That's not how it works so much on the right. The right is it claps people's brains in these sort of thought terminating cliches a lot.
I think I kind of take issue with that a little bit, because well, I mean, there's a lot to take issue with depending on like how you define things. Like, because you can even define like some liberals to be on the right, and then you're well, I mean, by that sense, I mean, yeah, you can bring people on the right like over to the left. It just depends on like what your like where your line is and like who you call the right. And I do think to some extent that there. Well, no, sure, but Well, sure, but I think to an extent that the right is also represents a large like field of views, and sure, like the far right is very united amongst like some things, but I think especially in the U.S. But like if you look at Europe and like the way that sort of the right wing parties and like different parliaments, especially in like the Nordic countries, like they very much have like different kinds of approaches and different ideas. Sure, they come together in sort of being like the right wing voting bloc, but they're very like different in sort of the people that they represent in the parties. And I think I mean I understand sort of the Americanized view, but if you look at sort of like the global right wing, I do believe that there's like a lot of people who can be brought over by appealing to like certain things. So for example, like there are people on the right who have like more libertarian views that sometimes find themselves agreeing a lot with me, right? Because I would consider myself a left-wing libertarian. So it just depends on like how you appeal to them and like who you think, like what you're pulling on, like what their values are.
For sure, but again, as I brought up before, Milo Yiannopoulos isn't an example of like a light right-wing figure. He's
sure, yeah, I
literally,
agree, yeah, 100%.
Can I bring up like a practical matter with this? Like the far right is responsible, like in a recent study, for like over 300 deaths for like the past like 15, 20 years, and the far left is responsible for maybe one. As a practical matter,
sure.
I feel much safer at left events than I do at right ones. Just as a practical matter, right?
Yeah, I mean that's I'm talking like specifically in terms of like characterizing the right wing to be like more
right. But like when people ask the
or...
question like, why am I not going over to these sorts of events?
It's
sure. Partially motivated by safety. Like, and I hate to put it like that, but
that's fair.
It's right. Like, I am a trans person. Right.
It's completely true, but also again, like even in those spaces, there is not even just an intolerance of ideas. There's an intolerance of essentials. You can't be a trans person and go advocate in right-wing spaces. Like you can't. It just won't happen.
You can't in some left-wing spaces.
If you say the right things, you can if you say the right things, right? Like look at Blair White, for example.
If you completely pander, yes, absolutely. If you completely we have people like Blair Whites, for example, of course, but recognize that there is no challenge to the right wing. There's no challenge to a single right wing point. It's literally that like Blair White exists to confirm their biases. Like this is totally different.
Sure, but like this exists on the left as well, right? I mean, there are some left-wing spaces. I mean, specifically with like Tanky.
Yes, but not to the same degree. Yeah, but okay, but.
I mean, I
actually. These are right wingers. Come on.
I want to kind of push back a little bit on the whole idea that like the right, like what you said about a lot of the right depending on thought terminating cliches and a lot of the left not. I don't know that I entirely agree with that. I think there's a lot of people on the left who don't really investigate the left but are aesthetically interested in
100%,
what the left looks
100%.
Like. And I think that kind of making the implication of right wing dumb, left wing smart it's not good. It's not something that I can really. I don't like
really
that.
That's not the argument I'm making. I'm not. In fact, I would like. That's not the argument at all.
I think it has more to do with.
It's what it sounds like. It is what it sounds like. Whether it's actually the argument you're intending to make, it's what it sounds like. If you said that to somebody who like voted for Trump in the last election, they would say, "Oh, so you think I'm a moron? Well, I think you're a bloody blah."
I'm talking mostly to a panel of. I mean, everybody here is a leftist, as far as I know, or at least liberal.
Sure, I understand that, but my point is
very different.
I still think that to some extent you did make the point that it's a thought terminating cliche that the right depends on, and the left is this really diverse, incredibly good thinking mass of folks that have all of these different opinions they've arrived at because they've researched. If you think that the right wing doesn't research, they do research. They just research stuff that it's wrong. And I'm sorry.
I can defend the spirit of the thought terminating cliche.
Go ahead, Jangles.
Yeah, I can defend the concept of it because if you're a conservative, kind of by the nature of being a conservative, you're trying to maintain the status quo, and a thought terminating. Yeah, and a thought terminating cliche there is just maintaining the status quo versus so like you're assisting with inertia when you're not thinking too hard about issues because you're like you're going to work and living your life, stuff like that. Stuff that we tend to do. But thought terminating cliches coming from the left are like abolish capitalism and stuff like that. Like a ton of people having those, better, but a ton of people having those ideas. Well, it's not gonna really affect change.
Sorry, can we let Dylan jump in? Dylan's been, you know, I want Dylan.
Yeah, actually, I'm jumping in to say I gotta leave.
Oh, okay, no worries. Sorry we didn't get around to talking about your stuff, Dylan. Obviously,
it's okay, man. See you later, man.
Okay, catch you later.
See you then.
And it's not, I want to quickly state, it's not that I completely disagree with the point. It's that I do think that the viewpoint lends itself to a kind of a position that we're coming at these folks. Maybe so I have a lot of conservatives in my life because of my family. And the way I talk to them is not, I don't try to debunk them. I don't try to do any of that stuff. I try to present them with information that they may be interested in. I try to present them with, a version of something they may have heard or said that leads them in a different direction. I generally like, and I'm not saying that this is a viewpoint that you hold or in your interactions with conservative people necessarily engage in. But I try not to think of people in that way. I think that thinking of people as if they don't have a complex set of reasons for thinking the things that they think, I don't know that it's really productive personally.
Well, I'm not saying that it's not that they don't have their own motivations or not. I mean, I grew up right wing. I was right wing. I was indoctrinated. Like, and I remember what I had to challenge and what it felt like to realize that I had basically had these assumptions essentially given to me and ground in and repeated and repeated and repeated from every single source in my life. And then, of course, the other part of that is that a lot of these structures also act very much on like social ostracization as well, where if you doubt the church, you get ousted, and you can't doubt them in anything because one thing is sign of apostasy. Like this is this is more extreme right-wing spaces, which do tend to follow religious examples. The most extreme right-wingers are almost always somehow tied to some form of extreme religious group. And this is again not to say that like the left has like, I mean, I think there are a lot of like people who are not good at advocating for the left. I think there are people who don't really have good justifications and whatnot. But I just think that the way that people tend to come to leftism and the types of ideas that are propagated on the left are significantly less emotionally manipulative than a lot of the ones that are used on the right. In fact, I mean, like again, like I often point to young earth creationism, which is just like young earth creationism requires you to refute all of known science. And it literally like they lead to like when you're in like talking about evolution, they want you to doubt all of the science that has existed. All theories are no longer to be trusted. And so like it's deeply conspiratorial, and these are hugely influential. The Christian lobby in the United States. It's not to say that they're like that people are stupid. It's just that the way that the ideas propagate and are reinforced, we have to address these honestly. And I mean, my channel is one in which I welcome people from various perspectives. I speak my opinion very clearly. But I also challenge people to go like, hey, like, what are your assumptions that you're coming into here with? Because a lot of times, if you're coming from like a very extreme right-wing background and you have these assumptions about all kinds of people, those have been ground in and reinforced from multiple sources. And those are hard to break, and they take time, in my opinion.
I do agree. I do agree with you on those points. Yes.
I just think it's worth to mention that there are right-wingers who aren't conservatives necessarily, right? Like those are like a subset of right-wingers. I mean, I don't know.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Like, yeah.
Well, you're not trying to start. I'm not interested in the fucking donkey discourse, okay? Because I got hot takes on that.
No. I mean, depends on your definition of terms, right? I mean, I think for me, conservative is sort of a very specific sort of way. Like, conservative is like the opposite of progressive, right? And I think using left and right interchangeably with like progressive and conservative is a bit reductive, right? When I think of left, right,
are you talking about socially progressive, fiscally conservative people, right? Is that right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah,
like right. Some right libertarians can have socially progressive views, but it's more the case of trans people can do what the fuck they want to themselves, rather than a genuine compassion for trans people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm just trying to point out. I mean, there's levels, right? There's like a degree, right? Sure. And like, obviously I'm coming here from like a fucking European perspective, right? But like in Denmark, like we have like a conservative party, right? Like we have a conservative party in parliament.
Amazing.
And they're very much different than sort of the Liberal Party or like the People's Party, but they form like a coalition, right? But they have very different values and stuff that they fight for. Right, and I do think that it's important to recognize while the difference might not be as obvious in the US, but like globally, like all of us have global audiences, right? And there's a lot of people who come from different situations that might be right wing for like one or the other reason, but are very much susceptible to like some kinds of arguments. Specifically, I would say economic arguments, right? And analysis of like economic situations and sort of how society is structured. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I do agree that there are like center right positions, and those people have to be considered differently than when we're considering extremists. Extremists who also probably take I mean, a lot of extreme right wingers end up going into some form of traditionalism, even if it's like the vague 4chan traditionalism that just talks about trad wives and stuff like that. It's like the cringe traditionalism, but like, I mean, it's like it's a fact. Like these economic positions are often used as gateways to pull people into the conservative social positions, like white supremacy and all this stuff like that. But yeah, no, of course there are absolutely like libertarian types who are like more like have more liberal social views, and I would think those people can be reached. But also those people do tend to seek out other viewpoints, whereas like extreme right wingers will not. It is literally against many of their viewpoints to seek out opposing viewpoints, and they only look to see their opponent humiliated. So I mean, we're kind of off the main point, but yeah.
Yeah, we moved a bit far away from the main point. I guess that maybe to bring it back around to platforming, we've spoken quite a bit at length about the whole platforming in specifics. But yeah, I mean, I guess Pete, I'll throw it over to you just to ask, like, more broadly, what's your perspective on sort of platforming, and do you think there's certain circumstances where it's just not worth kind of
Oh yeah, there's definitely like, as far as, I mean, I obviously decided it wasn't worth to do it myself, but I mean it was for reasons that were maybe not particularly savory on the part of the actors that forced it. But I mean, do I think that me talking to Milo Yiannopoulos is important enough to wreck my own life over? No, I don't. But I mean, that's a very localized, centralized thing. Do I think that, absolutely every single possible opportunity we should take? Not necessarily, but I do think that there's a perception of the left that we're incapable of debating these people, and B, incapable of, for lack of a better word, showing the courage to even try. Like, that was one of the angles I believe Milo tried to take with Jangles multiple times. Yeah, it's so great that you even bother, and it's very condescending and ridiculous. But it's something they've sort of trained their people to do, and it's not possible to do. I'd go ahead and refer to the Peterson and Zizek debate, where Peterson put up his straw man that he has for many years on Marxism, what Marxism is, what Marxists want, et cetera, et cetera. And all Zizek did not even put up like a real like argument really against it. He just said, give me the names of some Marxists that think this. and he couldn't.
That's so
he couldn't
good.
do it. And it's not a particularly great argument or anything, but a lot of this stuff, as you said, Demon Mama, it's predicated on lies. And as much as I do think that there is a necessary caution to take when going in. Again, I said my intent, I was going to spend probably at least some time every day researching Milo Yiannopoulos until this happened, which it still hasn't yet. So it would have been quite a while. And I do think that it presented an opportunity to push back against certain points that he makes that he just doesn't have an out for, outside of, again, I mentioned it earlier, a lot of his go-tos are to simply to pivot to flattery or to attempt to change the subject, which, if you can manage to say, hey, I know what you're doing here, it disarms him. And again, I would point to Jangles' debate here as evidence of that. Like, you would not let him do those things, and he had nowhere to go from there. And I'm not saying like this would have made me come out looking incredible or anything, or even necessarily that the point is for me to look incredible or the left to look incredible. The point is to show, in my opinion, that this type of a thing, this guy that you've brought to your little conference here is not infallible. And a lot of them actually do think that these types, these dunking types who make, their points based on straw men and based on lies, they do think they're infallible. And a lot of the time, to rattle just the demeanor and B, the factual basis of what they're saying, it really undermines. And it's not necessarily that I think that the 100 or so people in this place would have necessarily taken that, but the video of the debate would get out there, and most likely, given the fact that people get very angry at me doing anything and give me a lot of attention doing that, the video itself, the full contextual video itself, would have gotten a lot of attention based on just the fact that I am generally looked at as someone who kicks up controversy, whether that's intentional or not.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I largely agree with the idea that agitation, like of like entrenched audiences, can be pretty valuable. It's I guess fuck my train of thought.
No, I was struggling there too, to be honest with you. I have attention deficit hyperactive disorder.
Me too.
I can sense that.
I kind of want to dig into this
I
idea.
know exactly where you're coming from. I sympathize though.
So I've been really struggling with like trying to define what exactly platforming is, right? But right now, so essentially where I'm at is that I think of platforming as any action which has the material effect of growing the follower or viewer base of a public figure. That's essentially how I look at it. Or at least in the sense that, like, once you get to that point, I have to wonder, and maybe people can entertain this line of thought. Is there, or like, I'm wondering if there's like responsible and irresponsible forms of platforming. Like, if you can platform someone like Milo, but it's like done responsibly.
Before you get there, when you had that definition, I like it, but is that the intent or the outcome that you were talking about?
Well, I mean, like, I suppose we're talking about outcome, right? We're looking at material effects. Okay. So whatever. So like, for example, if you go into a debate with someone and you go in with every intention of doing well, but you get absolutely fucking destroyed, I would say the intentions don't really matter. The effect is what matters more. Yeah. So don't fucking fuck up. Or else you're gonna, or else, yeah, exactly. So congratulations on not fucking up. You did a good thing. Because if you did fuck up, I would, like, it sucks because then you would feel bad, and I would also be like not mad at you, but like also I would have called that platforming.
Actually, sorry, Riley, you've been firing shots at everyone, right? I'm about to fucking fire a shot at you, so get ready, okay? Here it comes. I'm bringing the pain, right? So you recently platformed Calvin Garra, and call a not particularly challenging discourse with them, right?
Fuck, this is actually a real shot. Okay, I gotta deal with this now.
Okay, and onwards from that, Calvin Garra has released a collaboration with Blair White, in which they effectively just spent, what was it? I don't know how long the video was. A significant period of time in this
20
video.
Minutes.
Just bullying Milo Stewart, real 2016 fucking skeptic era vibes, right? So, you're sort of pointing out these other things, which is fair enough. I appreciate you doing it, but, I want you to take some responsibility for your own platforming and tell us a bit about that and, what's going on there.
Okay. All right. I have thought about this a lot. I've talked to people, my close friends in my Discord. So essentially, here is my current take on this. Right now, it is hard for me to tell whether or not he is acting in good faith, right? This has been something that a lot of people have wondered about for a while, and I'm going to explain this a little bit. People might want to interrupt because I'm about to say some stuff that people could easily disagree with. This is just my understanding, all right? Based on my conversation with him, I am at least I am at least inclined to believe that he is acting in good faith and that he is representing what he authentically believes to be true, rather than just like grifting to a specific opinion in order to like appeal to a specific audience, right? Given that, and given that apparently he watched me and likes me, I am trying to take if we want to think about theories of punishment, I am trying to take a utilitarian approach to the situation rather than a retributivist one. What I am trying to do is, to the best of my ability, if I'm able to talk to him, because we haven't talked, like this is private knowledge, but you put me on the spot, so I have to congratulations, cat's out of the bag. The plan is to go onto his stream at some point this week, onto his channel, onto his main channel, and talk to him. All right, and I am going to try and use that opportunity and the good faith that exists between at least the two of us right now to try and persuade him. At least I can make a lot of arguments, but what I'm going to essentially try and do is at least demonstrate to him the harm that his platform has caused, right? That's essentially what I want to go in and do. I want to go in, accomplish what I want to, and get the fuck out of there. Because, yeah, the video that he put out, not only was it very confusing to me, but it was disappointing. My suspicion is that he recorded it before we had our discussion and had it scheduled to go out because it was with Blair White. And I think that Blair lives in California. And I know he wasn't in California this past weekend because we were texting. We have actually exchanged numbers. So we are in that degree of communication. And he told me that he was in New York with his family. All right. So my suspicion is that he recorded that video and had it sent out before. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he didn't maliciously, intentionally create this video after we had spoken. And again, this is assuming a lot. It is assuming a lot. So people can criticize me and say, Riley, you're assuming a lot. Yeah, I am. But I would rather do that and try and get a positive outcome than just do the same thing that everyone has done and criticize him, which at this point, in case people haven't seen, has gotten us nowhere. And I want to try and take a different approach. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work, but I'm going to take the shot at least. That's basically my take.
Okay. Has anyone got anything to say to that?
Alvin Guerra has
don't disagree with
376,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about platforming. When what impact was Riley gonna have on Calvin?
All right. And also the practical effect of what happened. The practical effect is that like his subscribers didn't increase. He didn't get any additional views. It probably caused more harm for him because he basically we got a couple great quotes, right? Like he affirmed the validity of non-binary people just outright out the bat. He affirmed that he believes that Ariel Scarcell is a TERF, and in a very, again, like this is the most confusing quote, but this is like something I've been struggling with. He said, yeah, I feel so sorry for Milo. He's gotten a lot of hate. Shout out to Milo. And in the moment I was like, oh, that's awesome. And now I'm very conflicted about it because I don't know what to believe. Reality doesn't make any sense anymore. But
you know something really cool to come out of it? Someone who's like a fan of Calvin, and like tried to keep up with all the stuff he does. Like, oh, like Calvin's gonna talk to somebody. Ooh, he's gonna talk to Riley Grass Roshing. Yeah, let me check her out a little bit.
Yeah, like if anything, I was probably the one who was platformed more in that instance. Like I would make that argument. I think I would make that argument. Like, yes, was there some effect that a lot of people certainly got their hopes up only to have them kind of dashed the day after, or basically the day after when he released the next video? Yeah, like I'm not gonna try and hide the ball on that one. It was pretty much a shock to everyone, including myself. But essentially, like I basically elicited how I want to take this. I want to take advantage of the fact that we, amongst the two of us, have a good relationship so far, and I want to push that as far as I can because I fundamentally want to change minds on here.
Well, I think this is
not talking to people worked, right?
I think this is a really important point. That this was sort of the point that I've been trying to make, at least like this whole time, right? That there are big positives to gain, especially if you're like a smaller content creator on the left, because you yourself can be platformed. Right, you have a lot to gain if you make a good showing, and you can possibly like draw over like a percentage of their audience and grow your audience, and in the future like make more convincing arguments towards them, right? And like that's like a huge gain. Like that's what you should want as a leftist content creator, is make more people interested in the left. And
you don't have to win them over. You just have to interest them.
Yeah. Like
just understand. I'm not going to try
like
and go...
It's like the Inception thing, right? You just have to like put the...
They could find you incredibly insufferable and just like want to follow you from then, right?
If you
Like I
want
kept
to
up.
say it.
Yeah.
Reverse
True.
platform.
Attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas.
There it
Not
is.
one.
There's the meme. There's the Peter Coffin meme. Classic. Now that is I mean, yeah, it's true, isn't
Yeah.
it?
But that's essentially, I don't want to go like deeper into like my rationale or the basis why, because I don't want to like fold my hand too much before the thing actually happens.
No,
And I don't want to like
your
make
intentions. I think your intentions and reasoning make perfect sense. Like the scenario you set up personally, I think it makes sense for you to want to do what you're doing. I don't have a lot of questions for what you're doing personally.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I do want to say, just for the record, I do believe it's very possible for like right wingers and even like people who are demagogues to make a mistake and platform or legitimize a smaller figure on the left. I do believe that's possible. I'm not like a hardliner, don't talk to anybody. I mean, literally, my content, half my content is debating with people. Like, obviously, like I do believe that there's validity in that. But it's just like I think that when there's huge differentials in like in platform size and in platform efficacy and in how the platform is constructed, those things have to be taken really seriously by political commentators and political, Twitch streamers, anybody who's going to be in that place, and to be careful that it's not causing like a windfall of new followers or attention to somebody.
Yeah,
that's all.
like initially, like a lot of the people who initially platformed me were right wingers, right? Like somebody like Chud, exactly. Like I go on Chud's show all the time.
What are you
and,
talking
like...
about? Bullshit.
That's funny.
Crypto Chud. Okay, listen, I just want to throw it over. We've got about 40 minutes left, I guess. So, yeah, well, hopefully we'll bring some fresh perspectives, maybe some fresh arguments, some fresh spice. Breakfast Detective, let me throw it over to you first.
Hey, sorry, go on.
No, please introduce yourself and then shill yourself, okay? And then give us your take on platforming.
Sure. I'm Breakfast Detective. I'm an ANCOM. I do like left praxis on Twitch. We'll be live tonight at 8. We're having an LGBTQIA panel this Saturday at 2 p.m. Dario is going to be there. We're still looking for folks, so feel free to reach out in the DMs. As far as platforming goes, I kind of inform my viewpoint from like work like Karl Popper's The Paradox of Tolerance. So a very easy line for us to draw is that we should not be tolerant of viewpoints that are intolerant, and that if those viewpoints gain tolerance would then disavow us of our humanity, whatever it may be. And the second point that I would just add on to that, because I think about platforming a lot, is we have to be careful that when we engage with these ideas that we're not legitimizing them by taking them as talking points that are worth discussion. So a couple examples, or at least one standout example that I can think of, is the Jewish question. I don't think we should ever engage in that sort of conversation at all, because I think by trying to debunk that, we legitimize it, and that we should have certain things that are just off the table. Like, I'm not willing to discuss things that are going to disavow people of their humanity, lives, or livelihoods. So I think like we can kind of frame or shape our perception of these things, at least around that.
Sorry, can I just start? You say we shouldn't engage you the Jewish question, because what did you say about the livelihood part? What was that bit?
Well, I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit facetious towards the end there, going on a little bit of a tirade.
No,
but
no, that's fine. Be facetious as you want. I'm all about that. But sorry, the reason I wanted to clarify that is like, because I don't know, it feels like from what I did hear that maybe you could make the same argument against like debating trans issues, for example. Like, you know, because to debate the idea that trans people are X, Y, and Z, and if that's incorrect, is to legitimize that idea. Maybe, I don't know.
I guess I would say if the scope of which we're debating these things are, what is the extent to which social services should be used to support certain groups of people versus another, I'd say it's probably like a legitimate topic of conversation. But if we're erring into the territory of whether or not trans people exist, then I think that's an untenable conversation, and we shouldn't even engage that because it's illegitimate on its face.
Okay. And also, Mark's rejoined us. Mark, do you have any sort of thoughts or anything you want to kind of add at this point? Or?
I missed out on what was being talked about, so I'm trying to just re-enter to see how the conversation has gone since I left.
Yeah, it's
I'll
been a
take
bit of a weird one. Jangles, go ahead.
Sorry. Just to make sure I heard the last thing you said. So you said we like shouldn't debate people on whether or not trans people exist, which is obviously a position everyone here is taking a hard affirmative for, right?
Well,
I would hope so.
Obviously.
Yes, please.
wait.
Adding-
I need to clarify what you mean. Like, so if somebody says like trans people don't exist, right? Like, should you not push back against that? Is that what's being said?
No. What I'm saying is you shouldn't debate it as if it's a legitimate talking point. Like if somebody says something dumb and you feel like dedicating the emotional time and energy to just being like, no, wrong, then by all means. But whether or not we should platform this type of discussion for a larger audience is, I think, where I draw the line.
I
disagree
mean,
with that pretty
I
hard.
disagree with that
I
a
would
lot.
say that would actually be very unhelpful towards the actual progression of trans issues.
Yeah.
I don't want to take this too personally, but that's like 50% of my debates.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Jangles. I mean, yeah. I feel like this is like when, especially like the trans stuff, it's like some of the most easy arguments to make, right? Because there's just so much data on like the leftist viewpoint, right?
And some people who really agree with like we shouldn't even have this debate of whether or not trans people exist. Transphobes. They're pretty hard setting those beliefs. They're the ones who like, oh, I don't want to be.
But again, we're crossing wires here significantly. Like we're kind of lumping a lot of different things together. And what I'm talking about is we shouldn't have bad faith discussions on issues that pertain to people's lives and humanity. So I don't see the utility in debating someone like a TERF who's coming at this from a position of I'm not willing to acknowledge that person's humanity versus someone who's like, I don't know. Like I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think that's a critical distinction that we have.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I kind of want to push back against that because I mean, like, there is a distinction. Actually, one of my largest debates on my channel at this point was against someone who, going in, I pretty much knew was not gonna change his mind like at all, right? But it was great because effectively, whereas I wasn't so focused on trying to convince him, I was more focused on trying to convince the audience, right? By showing the audience how stupid his opinions were, right? I think that's something that you can't really do when you're talking to someone in good faith, because when you're talking to someone in good faith, like I do at least personally try my best to like be very cordial and respectable because like I know that they're legitimately trying, right? Like they're trying to understand what I'm saying and they're trying to reciprocate, right? So in that case, I do want to be like very cordial and respectable. But like when someone just doesn't give a fuck what I say and it's basically like I'm talking to a brick wall, well, I'm going to make something out of that, damn it. They're wasting my time. I'm going to get a good video out of it.
I agree, but I especially agree with the point where you said it's a waste of your time.
Well, I mean, like it's one of my top videos at this point.
Well, that's good. It doesn't sound like it's a waste of your time.
Here's a problem I have with what was said. Like, it seems like you regard platforming as a thing an individual does, and in the case of owning, I'll be right out. In the case of owning a platform like a channel or something, yes, that is up to an individual who's making a decision. But for the most part, a platform isn't really. It's not just like let's say somebody who doesn't own a channel goes out and does something that gets recorded, and it's embarrassing for them or it's embarrassing for whatever group they're a part of, and that gets put out there. That's not them platforming a bad view. It's not them like. Here's the thing. I feel like a lot of this was about like, personal decisions here, and platforming isn't necessarily simply about that. It's in a lot of cases power. Who has power in the situation? Who is institutionally connected in a situation? Who is disseminating views on say a mainstream platform or an alternative platform of a comparable size, for instance.
This is something I think is extremely important. Just like recognizing who has the power in the discussion, right? So like when you're arguing like trans issues with somebody who either doesn't understand or like is a TERF or whatever, like you're coming like from the minority of the minority of the minority opinion, right? And there is such a power imbalance that if you don't fight, you'll get fucked by society, by everyone, right? So you have to take a stand somewhere. And like it's the same. Like if you're arguing from a very like minority side, it's super hard to just be like, yeah, I'm not even gonna take that argument, right? Because if you don't, if nobody does, then the system is just gonna perpetuate itself.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
The one place
stand
where
exactly.
I
I
stand
do
by
have to
like
leave
the idea.
actually though. I do have to get going. I'm sorry, but I do have to leave.
Sure.
No,
it was
no
excellent
worries,
talking to you,
Peter.
Peter.
Yeah,
It was
this
good.
thanks for
It was
coming
very
on.
good meeting all of you. Actually, I thought this was a pretty
wonderful.
productive conversation.
Thanks
Great
for the
stuff.
talk.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Peter. I'll speak to you
Yes,
soon.
Unfortunate I wasn't here for most of it, but good meeting
That's
you.
all right. I'm sure we'll have some opportunity to speak at some point. You guys
Yeah.
have a good night, everybody.
Fellow
Thanks,
Michigander.
Peter.
Thanks for coming
Later.
Poppin'.
Okay, what's going on here?
So,
One question.
yeah, there was something I wanted to say just to kind of like, I don't know, maybe this will just add a different way of looking at it, but like I think there are certain argument types that are very hard to address head on. And honestly, I think maybe this is just a difference in the definition of like good faith or whatever, but there are certain things I will not engage in like quote unquote good faith because the question or the argument was not made in good faith in the first place. That doesn't mean I won't necessarily address it. One such example of this that isn't like just to change the topic to give a different example is like I mean, how many people have encountered the fucking vuvuzela like argument? They're like, oh, well, socialism in Venezuela. It's like, why don't they have stuff on their shelves? And like, or they're eating rats or whatever. And like stuff like that's not like a genuine question. In my mind, like it's a question that's designed to like to like poison the conversation in the first place and allow for easy pivots. So I will often address questions like that, but rarely ever with like the like what they're like a direct response, because they're basically sea lioning. They're hoping, in a lot of times in my experience, is that type of question is meant to waste your time and get you angry and trigger you and blah blah blah. So what I will do is go, okay, do you actually care about the history of Venezuela, and are we going to actually talk about the history of a sovereign nation that's existed for a long time and all of the economic things that might go in there, or are you trying to say something else? And if you're trying to say something else, do you think you could provide another example that doesn't involve us having to jump to the history of a country that I don't like live in, that I don't like, I don't think either of us can claim to be experts on. And oftentimes you'll find out that the actual thing is they just don't like socialism, and then you can address that question in much better faith. And I think the same thing can go. I mean, it depends on the degree of the person in question, but people who are like extremely doubting of like the science on trans stuff, like I think you can address that in different ways, but sometimes it does require like refusing to meet them like on their ground and instead resetting the ground and saying like, okay, you want to have this talk, here's how we talk about it, because the way that you've brought it in is not honest. And you don't obviously say that openly, but you can illustrate that to your audience. And I think that's often a way to handle those sort of issues, because it's like, yeah, because I do think there's a big mistake in like for example, I think that a lot of time could be wasted arguing with somebody about choose a conspiracy, QAnon, coronavirus denialism, blah blah blah. They could spend all day telling you, yeah, but what about the motorcycle that was a motorcycle death that was instead a coronavirus or whatever? And those are all just details that are ultimately designed to just sort of distract from the main point, which is that like, oh, like there's actually a problem at hand. And you can sometimes shortcut that by refusing to like engage in bad faith questions and instead reframing it with a good faith approach for your audience.
That's a great point.
I think I think when you're going to call somebody out on bad faith, and too many people do this, you better make sure that you are bulletproof in calling it out, because it seems like it's so used these days that people forget what it even means, and it just turns into thing I didn't like that you said. So that's one thing I'd like to call attention to, is be absolutely sure that you can demonstrate that they are knowingly providing a deception, that or even they're omitting details purposely to create the deception. Like I think that's really important. But overall, with this discussion, like I agree that there is no better disinfectant than sunlight. So debating those
yes.
people, so long as you can come through really well, if you know your shit, you'll be good, you know.
So
that's those boats.
I need to push back on that just real quick. I don't mean to monopolize the conversation.
Okay, no, that's fine. Push back on that, but then I really want to move on to talk about Dylan because
Dylan wants to know if he can come in if there's time.
yeah. I'm putting Dylan in now. Yeah, of course.
All right.
Listen, I've always got time for Dylan Burns. All right, Dylan Burns.
Damn right.
Is back. Right, Breakfast Detective. I'll let you push back on that, and then I really want to talk. I really want to move the conversation on to talk about Dylan's situation too. Okay.
Definitely, yeah. I'll make it really quick.
Okay.
So I was looking at this the other day. For countries that have the highest indices of free speech, you know, by various qualifications, right? The United States, I think, being in the top 3 or 4. We also rank the highest in science denialism, in like all kinds of conspiratorial and like anti-science beliefs that end up being very harmful and causing lots of harm. So I'm still kind of grappling with this. I don't have any good answers for this, but I think that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that sunlight is not the best evidence, and that colloquial wisdom probably applied more before the age of the internet. And now that this information is able to travel at light speed from people who are no longer authorities on these things, and there's no institutional gatekeeping on this information, you know, all of a sudden, the less restrictions that we have on these things allow these harmful and non-true ideas to spread at light speed. So there's got to be another factor to this equation that's changing with the internet that we're just not appreciating. And I don't have it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Can I push back on that a little bit?
Okay. I'm going to move Dylan into the middle of preparation. Final pushback, and then we'll move on. Okay.
Okay. So I totally get where you're coming from with that. Like, I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think there are some things that we do need to clamp down on. I think that there's, obviously we need to make sure that us as the electorate maintain its legitimacy. But I think there are some things that the government should stop people from saying. We already kind of do, as we all know. Can't yell fire in a crowded building sort of situation. But I definitely see the problem with it's not that they're all being exposed by the sunlight. They're all controlling different levels of sunlight. Like, they all got their own lights to evade the darkness, so to speak, that they're shining on these various things. So it gets very confusing when that happens. So I see that as being a problem, but that's why you do need the pushback. If the government isn't going to help us with this, if Facebook isn't going to go out there and actually do something to stop these misinformation campaigns, which that's where most of it comes from, then you need the debate bros or the people who are going to tackle it head on, your Jangles, your H-bombs, your ContraPoints, all those. You need them to step in and
one of these things is not like the other.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the wide range of people that do generally exposure of the right. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I also want to comment on this. Just to say that, like,
sorry, Riley. Sorry to cut you off. You're going to have plenty of chance to chip in next on the next bit. Okay. It's just I really want to move back to Dylan, because my intention was to speak about Jangles debating Milo, and then Peter Coffin came on and we spoke about Peter debating Milo. It didn't happen. And I had this whole other thing I wanted to talk about, which was Dylan. Okay. So, Dylan, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just got back. I just testified in front of the city council. I think I made my point clear, pretty clear. And I streamed it too. So if anybody wants to go check that out, they can check the VOD.
What was this over?
Basically, it has to do with the fact of taxpayer money going to institutions that will not have gay adoptees. Basically, won't let people adopt gay people adopt kids, and taxpayer money going to that. And basically the idea that that's a public service, it should be available to all of the public. And I went there and basically talked about the fact that us as a city, we should hop on this case because 2 trans people were executed last year in our county, right? We've had mainstream political figures running for mayor who are outing public officials on the campaign trail, and we like to think of ourselves as this progressive city, but all this stuff is going on around us, and all these people talking like we just stay out of it. This is so controversial, we stay out of it. Honestly, to me, it's cowardly. And any city council member on there who honestly is going to vote against this should be primaried.
Boom.
Hell yeah.
Hey,
Boom.
chat, I want you to pay attention to what he just said. That's praxis right there.
There you go.
Okay, so we have
Nice.
another surprise guest coming on in just a sec. So we're going to get stacked here in a second. Before we get
That's
Milo is
Milo.
here.
What?
Shit, I just got a raid from someone. I think who was that? Oh shit, I'm really important. Thanks very much for the raid,
damn.
viewers. Stick around. We're talking about platforming. We got some fucking celebs on the panel, and also Vadim, Creationist Cat, is coming on very shortly. So stick around for that. Now, Dylan,
Damn.
I'm going to throw over
cool.
to you. Okay, outline this controversy that you face around your panel. Shoot.
So first, I will also say Vadim's going to be on Friday for Hippie Dippy podcast at 8 p.m. EST,
Oh, fuck.
all about immigration. So
No, it's all good.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him.
Dylan's panel's great. Okay,
Double platform.
We're friendly competition. Dylan's crushing it at the moment. There's no denying that. But yeah, go and check out
It's
Dylan's
not even
panel.
competition.
but-
You guys don't do the same night.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
I mean, if anything, we could help each other. But
Yeah.
he's like, no, he constantly tries to undermine me. You see, Chuck.
Chud's over here putting up the wall. Like, come
Yeah.
on.
Come on,
Building the
open
wall
up
like
the free
Trump. You can't
trade.
do
You
that.
know, the
Come-
golden
look, just-
arch is
look,
of
listen,
peace.
look,
Open
Look, I
borders,
was just,
brother.
okay. For fuck's sake, listen. Just fucking talk about your panel. You want to talk about your panel? I'm giving you a chance to, right?
I'm
What's the
talking about my panel. I'm just
Okay,
talking
okay.
what you don't like.
Okay. What's this shit about the platforming then? What you've received some criticism? Tell your side of the story.
Very, very little criticism, but when it does come up, it's the idea that like, hey, Dylan, you should not be having people, right wingers, come on the show to debate left wingers because sometimes the left wingers lose, and that's the only criticism I faced so far is that sometimes the left doesn't look great. Maybe it's because sometimes it's the setup or a certain individual just has an off day or something like that. That's what it sounds like to me, is that many on some occasions the right wingers present their ideas in a better fashion and end up
okay.
looking better.
I mean, isn't
I
this
have some,
wait?
I have some criticisms of what you're doing.
If you have
on
other
the
if you have
stream.
other criticisms, I'd be taking those too.
Yeah.
Is it?
So my main concerns are that you're, as far as I understand, I don't know much about these people, but as far as I understand, these are like pretty small creators. These are like 20,
Some are
30
small.
viewer.
Some are small, yeah.
Would you say the majority or just kind of
I
middle?
would say the majority are 20 to 60. That's the range usually.
So they're just kind of getting their start on Twitch, really, aren't they? They're kind of
Some
maybe
of
they've been doing
them
it a
got
while,
their
but they're
start, some of them are like been doing it for a while, but they just don't do this full time.
kind of breaking into it. And Twitch seems largely, in terms of explicit politics, is a very left-leaning platform.
Yeah,
and I'm
most definitely.
concerned that you're potentially elevating the profiles of these like up-and-coming right-wing figures for the sake of entertainment, and it's certainly entertaining. Everyone loves seeing the two sides. Oh, that's my voice. Butt heads against each other.
Wait. Sorry. Yeah.
You're really low.
Hello. I'm
Oh,
really
yeah.
low.
Oh, that was a bit better.
Wait, listen. This is chaos. Okay, let me take control, please. Right.
I understand. I just want to make sure that I have
No, you're
any
good, Vadim.
audio. Yeah, I'm
You're
good?
fine. You're absolutely fine. No. The point I was going to make is that everyone's trying to, chip in. Right, Vadim. If you mute yourself on whereby, we're doing voice through Discord. Okay.
Right. And is the voice coming in through whereby right now?
Yes.
No.
People in the chat will have double.
Both.
So mute your mic on whereby, and then you can talk, and we can all hear you. All right.
All right.
Yes.
Perfect.
There we go.
Are we good now?
We're good. I really want to hear your hot takes, Vadim. But first of all, I just want to continue with this route of the conversation, and then I'll throw it over to you to give your take. Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically all I had to say in regards to that. So like, what's your response to that, Dylan?
So my response to that would be is I know that certain right wingers have used my platform to grow. I know that. That's undeniable. Suspect Sushi went on and now he's on the Austin show, right? I mean, like that's a pretty he has grown, right? That is undeniable. But I would also say that I've seen a lot of the arguments in the first few weeks of the Hippy Dippy show. A lot of people would come on and they would genuinely now not know how to interact with right wingers, because there's been so many panels that where you look around the room and the most left wing you could find somebody is a Bernie voter. I mean, the most right wing you could possibly find in the room is a Bernie voter. And I look at that situation, it's like, wow, it seems to be DSA panel after DSA panel after DSA panel. When these people go out into the world and they're, not fighting against Democrats or Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, and they're going to interact with people who are like right wingers, who are like Mike Pence type right wingers, how are they going to actually be able to interact with them? And what I found is a lot of people on Twitch genuinely don't know how to do that. When I put people against people like Sledge, who, even though a lot of people like say Sledge is like, he's just ridiculous, he's crazy, or he's just like a brick wall, a lot of right wingers, and I would say a large chunk of right wingers, are just like Sledge and these other right wing people who I bring on, and people just don't know how to interact with them. And I think it's important to have a platform where the left can interact with them, even more so when the ruling party in this country is Donald Trump. When you are the opposition, you have to interact with the ruling party if you have any chance of eventually gaining power.
Yeah, I just kind of disagree with that. I don't think that some people on Twitch being able to speak to right wingers more convincingly is more important than maintaining our kind of dominance on this platform.
Thing is, I don't think
disagree with that.
Like if they want to talk to right wingers, they can just walk out the front door, right?
When it comes, well, not really. It's not that. I mean, when I walk out the front door, I'm not tapping people on the side of the shoulder and like interacting with them. But also, if people want to go like canvas or go and interact with people in their community, it's not like you go into your community, you bumble around a lot, and then you come home and you're like, damn, well, that didn't go as well. You want to be able to go out there with those tools. And when it comes to the ideological dominance of the left on Twitch, that's pretty solid. I don't see any threat to that really happening. The biggest conservative creators on the platform don't even talk conservative politics. The biggest one I can think of that really does is Demon Machine, and most of the time he just works on cars, right? And he's like, what, a libertarian? When I'm bringing these people on, what I see is they do grow, right? It's undeniable they grow, but the way they're growing is they're not growing from, in the majority of these cases, from convincing people to their argument. It's that there's already conservative people on Twitch who they felt like users on Twitch who felt like their voices haven't been really put out there, and they found a home with somebody they haven't actually been able to like interact with yet, because they don't see that on Twitch. There are conservatives on Twitch. We're never going to be able to expel them from the platform. I don't think I've really added to the amount of like conservative viewers on Twitch. If anything, from all the polling I've done, it seems the majority of the time people go more to the left.
But there are a lot of very reactionary types in the kind of gaming streams. I mean, like people who get tens of thousands of views, like that audience is sitting on Twitch, potentially just waiting to shift over to more explicitly political videos. And if you're furthering the careers of these people, they could all just get funneled straight into these creators, right?
Are we talking about people like the Quartering, or people who
on
are
Twitch?
Well,
like
not Twitch,
streamers who just have reactionaries in the audience.
Then we can talk about reactionaries in the audience. Those people exist there, right? And if we're going to be able to broaden our appeal throughout the rest of Twitch, because I don't think political Twitch has reached its top, right? Let's be honest. It hasn't. It's going to continue to grow. And as it continues to grow, I'm sorry, it's not going to be just like 20 Hassans at the top of it. There's going to be right wingers there, and we need to be prepared for that. And I think the idea, yeah, Vadim, you want to ask?
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Why don't you finish your thought and I'll jump in.
I think the idea that we have a place where we interact with these people, right? And from the majority of polling I have done during stream and post stream, most of the time more people are convinced towards the left. But excluding that fact, I think having an environment where you can interact with right wingers where that doesn't currently exist on the platform, I think that's a positive thing.
I just want to say real quickly, I don't know, you're Noopy. You said something to the effect of the importance of keeping our dominance on the Twitch platform, or I assume you mean most platforms in general, whereas I certainly am with you on that. I think it's important to recognize that there are ebbs and flows with sort of like the cultural zeitgeist. And naturally, there are going to be portions of time in which the left is more attractive to the majority of people and the right is. And to a very large extent, I think that the left is as popular as it is right now because we've had 4 years of a hell world with President Trump. And so all I'm saying is that to a certain extent, I don't think that those things can really be monitored successfully by a group of like the public is going to go where it's going to go. So I don't know. It's a minor point, but I wanted to get that out there.
I think partially like the one of the main reasons for like the kind of more left-leaning dominance is like I think first of all like some of the creators like Hassan and Destiny, and also like just generally the ethos of kind of the terms of service of Twitch seems to be a lot more progressive than platforms like YouTube. Like YouTube is so big that you just like it took like so many news articles before they even dealt with like pedophilia. So like how then they don't give a shit about like neo-Nazis. Like it has to take like such a high level of public outcry before YouTube takes any action against like anyone. Whereas on Twitch, like you flash your I guess they on YouTube they would get you for flashing your boobies as well. But you say something a little bit too crazy on Twitch and you just get nuked. So so I think there's a kind of a environment carved out which is kind of explicitly for us. And I feel like we should just kind of maintain that. Like, I don't see why we should have them kind of encroaching on us like that.
Right.
When they basically already have YouTube, like, and like a lot of other corners of the internet, it seems.
A lot of people don't realize that YouTube was not always the like right-wing bastion that it is. It was never, in my opinion, super duper lefty, but it was somewhat progressive. And at the very least, you could say that like centrist left politics were kind of dominant within the whole YouTube stratosphere. And I honestly think it's only a matter of time. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I think it's only a matter of time before because they're always several years late to the game, but once they get into the game, they play hard. And they're learning more and more ways. Like someone mentioned the quartering earlier. He's a very reactionary YouTuber, yet he codes all of his words. Like he never curses. He has special words to denote other things. Sometimes they're dog whistles, or not always. I'm just saying that I think that they can find ways of infiltrating this space without kind of being so outlandish that they will get deplatformed, which I'm not necessarily against if their true intention is to like spread white nationalism or something. But I may be straying off topic, so I won't.
I mean, I agree with you that it's like, sure, it's a matter of time. Like if Twitch is going to be around for another like 40 years, then of course eventually like conservatives are going to come on here and grow. But all I'm saying is like we should delay that. We shouldn't assist them in like elevating them. Like like if we sit on our hands and don't talk to them, don't platform them, like we could have a solid like 5-10 years of them not being here, as opposed to like it just accelerating that process doesn't seem to be worthwhile.
Right.
Like it's hard to hold on, 1 second, please. 1 second.
I need to ask a very quick follow-up question just so I'm caught up.
No, come on. We don't want to let Vadim respond. Come on, Vadim. What do you say?
Sure.
No. It's just a follow-up question. And forgive me because I haven't been listening to the entire debate or discussion. But is this specifically about Dylan and others like him bringing right-wingers onto their platform? Or are we talking about something further than that?
Right. So at this point, basically, because we spoke, I don't know if you're aware, Peter Coffin was here earlier. We spoke about Milo and Jangles debate with Milo, and we've kind of moved the conversation on to talk about Dylan's specific platforming. I'm more than happy after discussing this for a bit to bring it around back to more broadly kind of platforming. And
Sure.
Did you have a quick point to make or about something else?
I don't have another point to make in regards to what I was speaking about, but thank you.
No worries. Right, Dylan, please respond, and then we'll throw it to someone else to push back on that. And
okay.
From there.
So when it comes to this idea that what we're doing is we're making these conservative creators that are going to come out and dominate. And I'm like, man, I love how Steve Shives is a 500,000 subscriber Andy, how Christina Summers has also dominated the platform on YouTube. When we look about how the right rose to prominence, it wasn't by just sitting in circle jerks and just talking forever about these things. That was part of it, that isolation that they made. But it was also spliced out with debates with people like Steve Shives or Christina I forget how to say her name. Summers.
Christy Winters.
Christy Winters. I was thinking of the wrong one. I don't remember. It's been so long since I've
Don't worry, it's all good.
Really.
It's all
But
good.
There was a time when Steve Shives actually debated, but then
Yeah.
he kind of said, "Fuck it."
And it didn't really, his debate, like he went away from that. But when you look at him, like those debates didn't like skyrocket people like him. And there were a lot of, at the time, a lot of like feminists, which they all lampooned on. I mean, you can see a million old reaction videos of people like Baring reacting to like, look, crazy feminist number 492. But Crazy Feminist 492 never got big after that. If anything, all that happened is a lot of criticism was directed in their manner. And when we talk about the type of platform I've made, maybe once in a while you might get somebody who goes up, like Suspect Sushi is now at 500 Twitch followers. Ooh, man. And that's after going on to the Austin show, which has like a huge reach, much bigger than mine, even if mine gets to like 300 to at top 2,000 people live, right? So I don't think, I think if anything, I genuinely believe this would in long term would be more beneficial to the left actually reaching out further by showing the example of our ideas clashing with and hopefully dominating the rights, and me presenting an unbiased platform towards either faction for that to interact. It's not because I'm rigging it for the left, it's just that's how I genuinely believe the left at the end of the day will win out, because, you know, I'm left wing and I think the ideas are better.
Okay, so I can see some hands up. So we're going to go Dario and then Mark and then Breakfast Detective. And then
Actually about to bounce.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
no, do you want to say bye? So, sorry, we're at the end of our time, I know, but...
last little thing, I was going to echo what Dylan said. I'm confident in our ability to win, even when our opponent shows up. So,
okay,
that's
brilliant.
Right?
Yeah, Jangles, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. If anyone else needs to go, we are at the time now, but I'm going to continue the stream because it seems to be still productive. So, shout yourself out, Jangles, show your content, and yeah.
Jangles ScienceLad, SJW debates on Twitter. Debated Milo a week ago. So,
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Thanks so much, Jangles. I'll speak to you soon.
Let's
Okay?
talk to you, bud.
I like everybody here, so I was glad to talk to y'all. See ya.
Good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
later.
Great to meet you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so going back to Dario, then what have you got to say?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to echo Dylan's point a little bit and sort of like go full circle back to what my initial argument at the start of all of this was, is that
bye.
Bye, Riley.
I think Riley just.
Yeah, I was saying I was leaving.
Oh, sorry, Riley. I didn't realize.
Bye,
Sorry.
Riley.
Oh,
Have a good
thanks
one,
for coming
okay?
on.
Thanks
Nice
for coming on.
talking to you,
Nice talking
Riley.
to you.
Have a good night.
All
All
right.
right, Dario.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I wanted to bring it full circle back to my initial point, which is that I do think that all of these things have positives to gain, right? Like positives in our for the left, and I do think Dylan very well illustrated ways that it could be better, but like not only like battling like the conservatives in the fucking marketplace of ideas and like sort of winning out is good on Twitch, but it can also catapult you into doing better in real life. Like learning how to make better arguments against conservatives can impact your daily lives, or like it can branch off onto different platforms. Not to suck myself off, but like there was, as soon as we started talking about this, Peter Pantsoff came into my chat and was like, watching you on Dylan's channel has helped me make points and win arguments in my life with people I know who are right wing. So I mean, it's happening like from Dylan's show, right? And it's demonstrably true that I mean you can help like left wingers structure their arguments better and sort of make gains there. Even if you don't grow your platform, you can make your platform more effective.
Yeah, okay. The only kind of argument to that I would have is that, like, I understand like the utility argument you're making. It does make sense to me. It just seems
yes.
like there's whoa, 1 second, Chud.
No, 1 second, Noopy. I said we're going to get a breakfast detective.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
yeah,
It's just because I'm the only one like
no,
arguing this
it's-
position.
no,
I felt
I
like
think I think Mark was first, and then
Mark was
and then
first.
me.
Sorry, yeah, Mark.
Yeah.
Mark, go first. Yeah, please go ahead, Mark.
Okay. So, my point's very simple. I don't want an echo chamber on Twitch. I don't want an echo chamber on YouTube. We need to go where the fight is. Conservatives need to exist on these platforms because if they don't, we fight each other. And also, we need to know what we're fighting against. Politics is going to have conservatives in it. No matter what we do, there's always going to be someone to the right of us that we're going to need to be fighting against to varying degrees. You know, there's always going to be something to discuss to come to a better conclusion on. Now, whether or not that person is reasonable or not, that's a completely different conversation, and you would attack the conversation differently to account for that. But to say that we need to have dominance on a specific platform, I completely disagree because I don't see this as team sports. This is not team sports. We're trying to come to conclusions for policy that affects actual human lives. Dominating on Twitch means nothing in the real world. Dominating conservatives on Twitch and fighting them, fighting their ideas to get our ideas out there, to get our talking points out there, to counter their talking points, that is far more important than how many subs Destiny and Hassan have versus Lecture Fan, you know? But if I could add one last thing to that, the conservatives that come on this platform, a lot of them are very flash in the pan. Lecture Fan's the only one that has maintained. Usually what happens is they end up getting some exposure, and either they flame out, or they say something to mask off and end up on D Live, or they just lose all their steam, like nobody pays attention to them and they just kind of keep going. Like I could name tons of conservative streamers I've talked to in the past who pretty much don't exist anymore. And why bring them up? Yeah, I attack their ideas. I expose them. I'm proud of that. You know, I'll take on the next one. That's not a problem. That's a good thing.
So oh, sorry, Chad, did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say, no, please, yeah. So I'll throw it for you, Perspective, and then Demon Mama, and then we'll go back out to an open conversation, okay?
Right on. So yeah, I really think that anyone worth their salt should not ever be making an argument that like we shouldn't like debate our ideological opponents. Like, of course we should. We should almost exclusively be doing that. Like, there's room for self-crit, and there's room for self-crit, and there should always be room for self-crit. But I don't think anyone should really be making the argument that like we don't want to be debating conservatives. And I do really agree with Dylan's point that like we do need more platforms that create venues where people can learn how to improve their rhetoric, especially in this space. Because the reality is, for anyone who's on the left knows that like leftists are a minority. Like the majority are liberals of whatever their political variety, right? With a very small proportion of like hard right wingers, and then a larger but small proportion of left wingers. So we have like a lot of ground that we need to cover, right? So that's going to involve us making really good, convincing, concise arguments against people that otherwise would disagree with us, right? I think that if there was criticism to be had, it's not at all of the medium, and it's not at all of the thought behind this praxis. It's who are we going to feature in the veins of doing this for the most productive conversation? Like, I disagree with him, but the Republican Nation or somebody like Suspect Sushi, I think, is a more productive person to have conversations with than someone like Ankar, for instance, who will get to a position where he's like, yeah, like, I think we should just shoot people that I don't like. And, you know, like, I think that's a big distinction there. So when it comes down to it, yeah, we should obviously be disagreeing with people. I mean, I'm not going to reiterate my point. I think you all heard it. That's just about it.
Okay. And then Demon Mama, I wanted to say something, and then back to open conversation.
You know, I've been very appreciative of Hippy Dippy. I think it's a very good arena. It's a very good way for people to get not just practice, but to to like get feedback. I mean, I've gotten an incredible amount of feedback in the sort of follow-ups to being on Hippy Dippy. It's been a very valuable thing for both my own like improvement in debate, but also in like understanding what arguments are being used and being able to engage with them. You know, I think that as I mentioned before in the previous discussion, in the previous topic, that I think how a platform is constructed is really important. And I think constructing it from a perspective of, hey, like this is where we're here to talk about ideas, to bounce back political like ideas, and this isn't just like, you know, and like this isn't just an open like discussion for whatever thing you want to go on about. I think that's really important. I have, of course, I have minor critiques. You know, I think certain people have been probably not the best, but I had a good time arguing against Ankar. I'm not gonna lie, even though I think that some of the stuff that he said was truly repulsive.
He's not really gonna be back ever.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel you on that, and I think that's probably a wise choice. Um, but I think that like
CMD live.
the fact that that on this platform you're determining the topics, you determine when the topic can end, and the ultimate goal is sort of political synthesis. I think that sets up the platform to be framed in a good direction. And if as long like my goal would be, or my like advocacy for you would be to say like hold that seriously and take it seriously going forward, because it will probably get a lot harder as the platform gets larger, which it inevitably will, because it's just growing like crazy, and that's a good thing. I look forward to hopefully being able to debate on there again in the future. I've been on before. This is just the statement, because so for people who, you know, I have some bias, I do enjoy the show very much.
And speaking of the Hippy Dippy podcast, if I could really quick, like, yes, it truly is great, and it really does boost a lot of people. That's why certain people should definitely be on there at least once.
Oh god, I have currently about 200 people who have asked to be on, so it's a long list of people. So I promise.
I should have been way up on that list, Dylan. Come on.
Okay. We'll bump off Vadim for this Friday, and we'll put you on there.
I mean, I deserve it. I fucked up last Friday. I was supposed to be there. I apologize.
Two streamers enter. One
I can't do this.
It's all good, Vadim.
It's all good.
You let me on there.
Okay,
I
so I
it's
think
very
like,
poor form for me. It's not something I typically do. I'm still embarrassed about it.
It's okay, Vadim. Right? I actually prefer you coming on for this discussion, because last week went quite well, and hey, I think you'll have a fun time interacting with the people you're going to interact on this Friday.
Oh, really great.
By the way, you saw the topics are in the DM group?
You sent no, I didn't, but I'll check.
Oh, I didn't send them to your. I'll send them to your Twitter if you need me to, but they're in the DM group.
Okay, I'll check them out. I only saw the first one, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking about DACA, because that's something that I don't know that I did a video that was somewhat about it. Anyway, we're off topic by me talking about all this stuff, so screw that.
Have fun plugging.
But I actually did want to say one thing in reference to the Hippy Dippy show, that like I personally, you know, I've been kind of dipping my toes more and more into watching Twitch content that is just I'd always watched a fair amount. I'm gonna start streaming on Twitch at some point in the near future, but I had watched a lot of kind of just independent streams, but I started watching more roundtable shows, and I don't know. I think that there is a higher this is a very pretentious thing to say. I think there's a higher level quality of discourse to shows like the Hippy Dippy podcast and a lot of other similar shows that I've watched like it. I don't know if it's that Dylan is picking better actors in terms of the right wingers that he's choosing, or if if just the format kind of forces them to be on better behavior. Don't get me wrong; they're still saying a lot of bullshit, but watching those debates, I see more kind of productive things coming out of them in terms of what's being said, than I typically do if I'm on YouTube and see Sargon of Akkad going against person X, whether or not that person is a good debater and someone that I like. I don't know. I maybe I've just been lucky, but so yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. That again, I haven't been able to put my finger on it if it's the format or if it's the fact that people are choosing good people. But yeah, that's my take on it. I sort of in terms of the overall quality of the information that's being put out there, I am preferring what I'm seeing on Twitch to what I typically see on YouTube.
What I have found when it comes to how I set up the show, right, is that there's I try very carefully to make sure that when I pick somebody, I pick them in the idea that I'm thinking who they're going to counter on the other side. When I have 4v4, it's basically like a Pokemon battle. Fire counters water, da-da-da-da-da. And it's not because I'm setting up the left to succeed. I'm picking two people I think will interact in an interesting way that's going to be entertaining and extremely informative, right? So if I was like to stock one side with like, I don't know, like 4 Ben Shapiros and the other side with like 4 Hassans, then obviously the Ben Shapiros are going to like come out on top, right? But that's not what I try to do. I try to make sure there's like 4v4 and I try to balance it in a certain way. And I just want to put forward this proposal to everybody. We all saw what happened to Joshua Collins. Wouldn't it have been great if he was a Republican? If that happened, if that we brought a Republican on and that happened to a Republican running for office? Wouldn't that have been interesting?
I mean, listen. Fucking people running for office are generally not that good at like debating, in my experience. Like
I mean, yeah, true.
I mean,
I've more reason to bring them on.
Yeah, I mean, if you can bring them on, listen, dude. I've been on John Burke's show like 2 times where he brought on like Republican Congress people and people running like for the House. I mean, they were honestly really bad. It was just like them repeating the phrase freedom over and over again. It was just like, is this
Joe Biden
real?
on a panel. That's what we fucking need, right?
Yeah.
Bring Biden on.
Wait, didn't we have?
Come on, man.
Look.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Oh.
I will say, I think something that came up in the last topic that is also relevant here is the idea of like broad versus like very specific topics. And I think one of the strengths of Hippy Dippy over other podcasts over other panels that I've been on is that Hippy Dippy tends to have much more constructed topics where there's something more specific. And we do tend to like, I mean, on all the shows I've been on, you get off topic, things go broad usually. But that's sort of a byproduct of panels, not so much the construction of the questions. I think if you give really broad questions, it makes a lot of room for people who are like demagogue types to expound and what's the right word, like gish gallop around and not actually confront facts. And I think that's where things can become dangerous. But again, I think one of the nice things is that we tend to have pretty structured conversations that don't like often spin off into like somebody propagating conspiracy or something like that, which again, that's usually my concern with the like problems of platforming is usually when a like credulity or legitimacy is granted to somebody who's ultimately a demagogue pushing a very, very slanted and manipulative viewpoint.
Yeah, like I said earlier about like Joe, if you basically just turn into Joe Rogan, where you're just gonna kind of go, you'll push back a little bit, but you'll largely go, yeah, I kind of agree with that.
I think like I don't necessarily like. I think though the best example of that has got to be Dave Rubin, right? Like that's the classic meme. Because to be fair, Joe Rogan at certain points does push back pretty fucking hard. An example being with Dave Rubin.
My brain is in recovery mode, Chad. I can't.
But Dave Rubin is the ultimate in just literally, soft platforming people and allowing them to say whatever the fuck they want without any pushback whatsoever.
Yeah, I'd say Tim Pool too.
Oh, sorry. Why don't you go ahead? Because I have sort of a general statement to make, which may have already been made. Because I came into this late.
Yeah, sure. Please do. Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
You want me to go for it? Because if somebody has something to say, that all right, I'll go ahead. I just think that it's very and I think most people here would probably be on the same page with me. So many right wingers frame things like getting kicked off of Twitter or what have you platform as like an anti-free speech move, when it's basically like I'm not a big libertarian, but it's basically property rights. It's basically the company like enforcing their TOS. But the thing that the internet has done that is both fantastic and horrible, is it's given a voice to the masses. And so therefore there are all these voices who their only recourse used to be to kind of either rely on crazy what do they call them, like newsletters, or just like shouting with a megaphone in the town square and whatnot. And that is within the purview of free speech, so they can do those things, but it confine their ideas to a small space. And so I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that a lot of the people who tend to get deplatformed on the right, who they go crazy about and like just like I don't know, just people like Alex Jones, people like Richard Spencer. I mean, there's not a lot of people who on the right who like will at least openly say that they like Richard Spencer, but they'll at least like say like, oh, he deserves a platform. Well, I don't know. I think it's fine for these companies to be making their own decisions. And it's in fact important too, because those people, like I said, used to be the crazies on the street. And now by virtue of the fact that they have this ability to be on a platform that equalizes everything, they have more of a voice. So I don't know. This is, I guess, more of an observation than like a point with like a button on it. But I sort of wanted to throw that out there. I know it's off topic, but it's just something that I've been thinking about lately in terms of deplatforming, and I wanted to make sure that I kind of threw that out there.
Yeah, actually, I just want to throw something back at you in regards to the point you've made, and it's that, like, for me, when you kind of talk about, well, the companies can do what they want. For me, that was always about pointing out the hypocrisy in conservatives. On the one hand, saying, oh, bakers shouldn't be forced to bake a cake for a gay couple, right? And then on the other hand, they'll say, oh, we've got banned by this platform, right? But what I'm finding is that like leftists have gone beyond using that as an example of hypocrisy to like unironically making that argument in pretty much every case that someone is deplatformed. And to me, there's something inherently anti kind of leftist about siding with a massive tech conglomerate. And whilst I would say that broadly, the people that have been deplatformed so far have been fairly legitimate, I've had people say to me, oh, I'd be happy if the Quarter Ring got deplatformed. I mean, I'm slightly biased because I rely on the Quarter Ring for some degree of content. So I wanted to stay on the platform for that reason, right?
As do I.
Of course, yeah.
He has brought so much joy against him.
Exactly. But on the other hand, I think I don't know if he's doing that egregious stuff that I would back him being banned anyway. Like I would kind of be like, why is the Quarter Ring getting banned? And I worry that leftists have got caught up in this idea that we should just support deplatforming because it's the bad people. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I just don't like signing with big tech. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a catch-22 there. And you can, I think, make an argument that is that some would call slippery slope that I do respect, that like, well, maybe we'll be the next ones hung out to dry. But right. I don't know. I guess I just sort of I don't know. You know what? I'd have to like synthesize the thoughts a little bit more before I really kind of like had like a real robust response to that. I feel like yeah. So I'm just going to cut it off there. You make a good point.
Okay. I think if I can address that,
yeah, please do.
Like something, I mean, I think that we already see this in a lot of ways. Like I think, especially on YouTube. I mean, it was like, oh God, like just a few years ago that there was the whole thing where if you had like LGBTQ tagged on your videos, it would suppress you in the algorithm. Yeah. Like there was like these like mass cancellation of lefty figures has already happened on these platforms very well documentedly, like whether intentional or not, it's been something that's happened. And as we know from tons and tons of like lefty video creators who get their content demonetized because they simply happen to be talking about complicated political issues that are not deemed as advertiser friendly. Like that's another thing that we can deal with. But I think sometimes I think you're right that some online leftists do like get a little overzealous about celebrating deplatforming, but also it's like it's kind of one of those things where I think some people see the corporate presence as a given, which it is. I would agree with that analysis that this is something that we're dealing with and it's the battlefield that we're on. So I don't really take too much worry about like people being happy when someone that they don't like who puts out really bad rhetoric gets knocked off the platform. Like I mean, I think like certain people, yeah, like I'm not gonna like push for it. I'm not gonna like go and report every Tim Pool video, or I mean, okay, Tim Pool talks about Civil War a whole lot, but all right. But like you know, quartering videos, I'm not gonna go like hound and report or anything like that. But I don't think I'm gonna be like particularly sad if he gets knocked off because he said something too offensive in a video one time. Because the same thing can happen to anybody. And in fact, we've even seen that with prominent leftist figures who got knocked off this platform, for example.
Okay,